Yeah, 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 yeah. Hey, hey, way too fast. Way too fast. I gotta go. I'm in the zone. Foot on the gas. Foot on the gas. Yeah, yeah, yeah. GPS. I got goals. I know where to go, so I never crash. Yeah. Hey, hey, way too fast. Way too fast. I gotta go. I'm in the zone. Foot on the gas. Foot on the gas. Yeah. Hey, GPS. I got goals. I know where to go, so I never crash. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm in the end zone. Where did he go? You way too slow, homie, I been gone. I know you see, I got the rings, homie, I been flown. Me and the team going for rings, that is the end goal. Hey, I go beast mode, all on the world like Eco. I go crazy like CeeLo, can't stop me like Chico's. I'm suave like Rico, can't be mine no repo. This my home like Depot, can't deny like Vito. Hey, hey, way too fast. I gotta go, I'm in the zone, foot on the gas. Foot on the gas, yeah, yeah, yeah. GPS, I got goals, I know where to go, so I never crash. Hey, hey, way too fast. Way too fast. I gotta go, I'm in the zone, foot on the gas. Foot on the gas, yeah. Hey, GPS, I got goals, I know where to go, so I never crash. So I never crash. Hey, hey, way too fast. Way too fast. I gotta go. I'm in the zone. Foot on the gas. Foot on the gas, yeah. Hey, GPS. I got goals. I know where to go, so I'll never crash.
The race for the chase leaves its final 2 rounds remaining, with a chance at the Music City to strum things up in the fight to make it to the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series Championship race. It's live from the virtual Nashville Superspeedway, where the KBueno Racing Network welcomes you to coverage of this latest round of the 2026 Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series season, and our first and only visit to the Music City and Nashville Superspeedway. Welcome to race 18 of the 2026 season. Glad that you're with us here on the KBueno Racing Network as we continue to inch closer to Decision Day at Richmond Raceway in the Commonwealth of Virginia to decide the 12 that move on to the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series chase to run for a Season 2 championship. I'm Kenneth Bueno, thankful to be joining you alongside for this journey here tonight from this 1.33-mile concrete oval not too far from Nashville proper in Tennessee. It's been a whirlwind of a season, but we are finally getting down to the home stretch. Last two races of the regular campaign tonight and next week at Richmond Raceway to decide the drivers that make the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series chase for 2026. It's been lots of new changes over the course of the last few months with the way this season has gone through, a dominating storyline in Cedric Hunter, and of course everybody dealing with overall points racing as a result of the overall points overhaul in between seasons 1 and 2, where we raced the playoffs last season and had a championship 4 until the finale. This time around, only 12 drivers, now based on points, that make it through to Chicagoland and the opening race of the chase in a few weeks. So tonight in Nashville Superspeedway, one of the few intermediate tracks in this regular season, and we haven't seen many of them, at least not in a while. We haven't seen a proper intermediate oval. It's not a 1.5 miler, but it's rather close to that. Kansas Speedway, the last 1.5 mile track, but still in the group of intermediate tracks on the schedule. We haven't properly had one since that Kansas date in early May. So safe to say it has been a few months. The drivers probably a little bit more rusty than usual, especially after the chaos that ensued with strategy and everything in between after last week's race at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Let's first give you the scope of what happened in Loudon, New Hampshire just last Sunday. It was Steven Stepien on the pole, the hometown driver trying to capture the win at a track that he loves so very much, although it wasn't the best start for the driver of the 88, Warren Kyle Keefe. Able to get around, led the first few laps before there was trouble very early. James Kunkel with a rather harmless spin off of turn 2 from the nose of the 23 of Charles Van Schaik. And then it was just running under green where Stepien had pulled away, dominated the first half of the race, and led over 50 laps on the way to try and capture the victory. There were some good passes along the way. Drivers like Matthew Perusini making his first start in a little while through the series. The rookie driver making a standout effort. And then more drama in turn 3. Stephen Harlow diving to the inside of Garrett Walden. Under the rookie driver just didn't pan out for the car of the number 6. Ended up spinning around, causing another latest spill. Field came down pit road, but it was all about this Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series Chevrolet until Cedric Hunter made his appearance. The driver who has dominated the ranks of this season, the 7-time race winner this year, trying to go for number 8 in New Hampshire, and then things stayed green through strategy. We were wondering whether the drivers are going to go for a 1 or 2 stop strategy until the end. It seemed like a 2-stopper for a majority of the field. It seemed like a 1-stopper for Cedric Hunter and Matthew Perusini. That will matter a ton once things happen later on in the race. This was the full cycle on the fresh tires. The 2-stop strategy seemed to prevail, and then Hunter found trouble at the exit at turn 4 into the outside wall on the front straightaway off the nose of Perusini's Chevrolet. And more drama to bring out a late yellow within 10 laps to go. Zach Wilson and Steven Stepien miscommunicate on the braking entry. Overtime attempt number 1. Stepien jumps early. That would come to play much later. Another attempt at overtime sees Stepien on the track, pulling away, crossing the start-finish line, but after a review, that overtime restart where Stepien jumped a little bit too early was the cause of the penalty. They gave the win instead to the South Carolinian Brandon Banks, his 2nd victory of the season and his 4th in his Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series career. So after Stepien gets dramatically penalized, we had a brand new winner there. Brandon Banks getting the W, of course, trying to chase Cedric Hunter in the overall driver standings. We move on to what we see here. Of course, 5 drivers that have now locked their way in to the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series chase. They will see their entryway into the run for the championship. That does include Stepien, most importantly. So even though he was dropped all the way down to the last position on the lead lap, as a result of the penalty from New Hampshire, he is still going to be able to see the fruits of his overall labor this season, and his multiple race victories will carry through to a locked-in ticket. Garrett Walden is the next driver waiting, and obviously things will turn green from the left side of your screen going down to the top 12 once we finalize things after Richmond next Sunday. But that gap sits at 14 points for the top 12. Justin Erb now the last driver into the chase. Kip Easley, the driver of the 27, is the first driver out. And most importantly, we're looking at the entry list for this race. Kip Easley is not set to be here, so that will be an opportunity for Justin Erb to pull away. He is qualified 10th, so he's going to try and continue to marginalize and make sure that gap stays as large as it can be. Richard Swavely is still in the mix of things along with James Kunkel, but those are the last drivers that are in before the red line gets to you. We now officially know multiple others have joined Daniel Holdcroft in not being eligible to make the chase mathematically. That includes rookie David Duran, Brad Fulham, and Casey Nodden. You'll see those drivers highlighted in red. So that means they are completely out of it. They have no chance of making the chase. Those around that line and those around the red area also need to be careful if they want to make a last-ditch effort. Only 2 races to go, so not much time to be able to make a difference. They have to start now if they haven't already. And apart from the overall drama of what is this cathartic run for the chase and the championship in the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series Season 2, of course, we have a brand new in-season challenge that's in play for 2026. So we have gone down to the last 4 that are eligible in what is currently the semi-final race of this Droppin the Hammah in-season challenge. $100 to the winner of it all. It is now head-to-head. We went through a group stage through the first 2 of Daytona and Sonoma, then another overall group stage in Indy and New Hampshire last Sunday. That officially categorized itself to bring our final 4. Warren Kyle Keith moving on from the top left. Garrett Walden, the rookie out there, the only rookie apart from these final group of drivers. Stephen Harlow on the bottom right. And of course, Cedric Hunter has moved on. So the 45 car will play for a Droppin the Hammah in-season challenge championship for $100 or $50 if you are the runner-up at Richmond Raceway next week. So now it's not all about overall points you gain. It is just about the head-to-head. If you are able to beat a driver straight up on the track at the end of the results order, then you move on to the finale at Richmond of this in-season challenge. So that should be very much a lot of fun. It's been fun to cover it over the last few weeks, and now the drama really does pick up. We get to give you another storyline as the drivers not only run for the chase, all of the 4 drivers are basically guaranteed a spot as long as they continue to run well. But obviously, it's still dramatic anyway to see how things have shaped up over the course of the season. So we're at Nashville Superspeedway, just the second time we are here in series history. Steven Maggio won this race. Last time we were here at the 1.33 miler, it clocks in at about 2.14 kilometers. Opened back in 2001, then dropped off in 2011 before being reopened to NASCAR Cup Series racing in 2021. It has been a staple of the NASCAR calendar ever since. This is one of the few tracks on the oval calendar that involves concrete. You don't see that often. You see that at tracks like Bristol and at Dover, and you also see it here. So that usually means when it is hot in the Lebanon summer in Tennessee, it does get very, very hot, and that track absorbs all of the heat. So it still should be a challenge. It's a multi-groove racetrack in some sense. It wears off the tires, and a short track package that is used with higher horsepower will surely bring you for a ride. This is an older version of Nashville Superspeedway, but it is fundamentally the same track as we show you our KBueno onboard lap. Francisco giving us a run, and it really does get tight when you carry into 1 and 2 with all of that extra speed from the added horsepower with these next-gen cars. You try to cling to the yellow line on the inside of 3 and 4, and then just run up to the outside there and down this front straightaway where you can technically use the apron. This Nashville Superspeedway is open to that, but of course in the corners, drivers will have to play a lot of their strategy from there. So as we're just ready to kick off race number 18 of the 2026 Droppin the Hammah Cup Series season, let's bring you tonight's starting grid for race 18 in our penultimate event of the regular season, where Zach Wilson gets his pole of 29.844 for the Cypress Racing Academy Chevrolet. Still looking for win number 1 in his first 5 to 6 starts. Steven Stepien trying to avenge the heartbreak of last week in New Hampshire and trying to get his 3rd win of the season. The 88 car starts on the outside of row number 1. Back in row 2, you'll find another Cypress Racing Chevrolet, this time Jesse Whittington trying to punch his ticket to the chase with Stephen Harlow on the outside, part of those last 4 drivers in the in-season challenge. He is the highest qualifier among those drivers in this group tonight. Charles Van Schaik in the number 23, brand new scheme for the GOAT Racing diecast Ford Mustang. His dark horse starts inside the top 5. And Garrett Walden, the other side of the bracket in the in-season challenge, the rookie trying to stun them all. He's the first driver that is looking to capitalize and check his box into the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series chase after what has been a very successful campaign. Warren Kyle Keith, very strong in New Hampshire, the short track last week, trying to parlay that into the first win for the driver of the 24. He starts this one from 7th, and the 7-time race winner have a pair of wins on the intermediate tracks this year. Cedric Hunter, a deep qualifying effort for him. Categorically, he ends up in the top 8 for row number 4. Row 5, you'll find the 48 of Alex Muscarella tucked alongside the 84 of Chuck Stevens to cap off the top 10. Justin Erb and Richard Swavely, pair of teammates and good friends who have been in this series for quite a while. Those two start on the either end of row number 6 tonight to 12th. James Kunkel back in 13th with Justin Hendry in the 85. Outside in the 14th spot, Matthew Parasini is the last driver to set a time in qualifying. The first driver not to is the man who captured victory just last Sunday, Brandon Banks, on win number 2 of the season. The South Carolina native for Drinkin' Bros Racing is inside the top 16 in row number 8. Brad Fulham and Casey Knighton bring us the finalized row of drivers that are on either side of the line, with Kevin Roy being on the inside of row number 10 in 19th, bringing us the full car field here from Nashville Superspeedway. So as we get things ready to go, lights are off from the iRacing official pace car. I want to remind you what is on tap tonight with our SKMcars.com race analysis. It is a long one here from Nashville. 200 laps, 266 miles, and 426 kilometers in total. Again, this is with the short track package that is used with these NASCAR Next Gen cars. So one thing you will notice is that the bottom end of the racing cars do not have the strakes that is usually there for intermediate tracks that are 1.5 miles or over. So you see the lower end strakes. That means this is the short track package that usually means an elevation of horsepower from what used to be 670 and now bumped up to 750. The admins of this series have talked about maintaining some sort of setup balance along with power at the intermediate tracks, and some of the larger ovals, you don't have to touch a track like this that is as difficult to drive. And when you have all that power beneath the wheel, it's obviously going to be something to look out for with everyone in this field, as we have long green flag runs that can happen here at Nashville Superspeedway. Whether it's a cacophony or a sweet symphony, drivers trying to find the right tune to make it to the chase and have one last effort. Green flag from Nashville. Battle for second rages on. Stepien wins the fight momentarily to turn 1. And on the completion of the opening lap, it is Wilson out in head. Stepien, Whittington, Harlow, and Walden, the top 5, who have singled out in this first lap or so. Charles Van Schaik and Cedric Hunter in this battle for what, about 6th place, coming back to turn 3, but all in the hands of Zach Wilson, the 60 car, trying to pull away on lap number 2. There's Wilson trying to scurry away, a driver who got into Stepien last week at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. That was certainly a talking point between those two on the brakes in turn number 1 that brought out the late yellow that ultimately created the overtime sequence where Stepien got penalized in the overtime box. But Wilson has been strong since his start in this series, has come close to winning a couple of times, and obviously led a bunch of laps under strategy at Nashville, or rather at New Hampshire, and still a driver that has put his worth out there as the North Carolinian continues to lead this race over the first 4. You watch some of the early battles here between the drivers in the back half of the top 10. Hunter just barely squeaking by in 6th. His battle with Van Schijk short-lived as the 23 bumps back to 8th, and Warren Kyle Keith tries to chase Hunter down in the middle of the top 7 as it's all single-filed very early on. And that's something you'll notice about this Nashville Superspeedway is, we see the different levels of lines that can be played in intermediates. And remember I said it's been a while since we've had a proper track like this. Even though this is not a 1.5 miler, it still falls into the category of overall intermediate racetracks. Kansas and Charlotte, which were some of the longest races of the season, especially the Charlotte one, have been on the calendar, but they were there very early. So over the course of the mid-season stretch, we saw a lot of tracks that were over 2 miles, pair of super speedways, Daytona and Talladega. And then, of course, we had the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Pocono Raceway, a short track in the Avondale Desert in Phoenix. And, of course, that New Hampshire race last Sunday, Sonoma, the only road course race of the year. So it has been very varied over the course of the year. However, we just haven't seen that many intermediate tracks. That will change, of course, once we get into the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series Chase. Our opening race of that Chase format is in Chicagoland in Joliet, Illinois, at a brand new refreshed Chicagoland Speedway, as the NASCAR Cup Series made their return this year for the first time since 2019. And then we go to Rockingham, the race after that. And then we'll obviously close the season at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Homestead, Miami set to be on the calendar as well. So many different intermediate tracks that'll be clustered all in one end. We usually go off of the sample size of what we see from the drivers at these types of tracks. It was very front-loaded earlier on in the season. Probably a time to kick the rust off for plenty of the drivers in this field as they attempt to try and master this 1.33 mile track that a driver like Steven Stepien very much enjoys. Didn't have the opportunity to win New Hampshire after the penalty, but trying to regain consciousness in a season where overall, in the grand scheme of things, he is locked in to the Chase format. He's currently the last driver that is locked in as of the most recent race. That, of course, will change after tonight, most likely, with drivers like Garrett Walden putting himself in the mix. And as you watch Walden in the middle of this top 5, of course, we do remind you that he is in play for the in-season challenge win. So him against Cedric Hunter, which is against Stephen Harlow, and against Warren Kyle Keith. Harlow is the highest running driver amongst the group. He has now moved himself into 4th after getting around the 43. So, of course, this is a mano-a-mano stretch, and they're not going out all after each other. It is a 1v1 on either side of the bracket. So while Keith has to face off Hunter, those two have to go mano-a-mano with each other. Walden does have to worry about Harlow. Good thing about this quartet, they are all single file from 4th all the way back to 7th. So it is going to be very fun to see the way they all handle each other on the racetrack. So far seems to be very tame between those cars. Chevrolet, 2 Fords, and a Toyota as they come back around to turn 1. So Wilson continues to lead this race. He has pulled away soundly to the tune of nearly a full second over Steven Stepien. And although the 88 car has been around just for a little bit, he's trying to hang tough with the driver of the 60, who in clean air just continues to put on some of the best laps we see, although that time it fell off just a little bit, 30.681, while Stepien, Whittington, and Harlow and a few others are trying to set lap times faster than that. We had a dominant effort last season by Steven Maggio for KBueno Racing. That was a tenure in which he led 150 of the overall 200 laps. It was a dominating performance for the 97. Wilson hoping that he can just follow in that trend of cars that just straight up lead too many laps here and officially dominate a race to the win and have no further drama, especially after what happened last Sunday at New Hampshire. And through all of the races we have had this season, it's been fun to watch Wilson's development, even after a very short time. Remember, he didn't join that long ago. Wilson has only been around for what is 4 races before tonight. This is his 5th career start. And in 3 of those 4 races before tonight, he has finished all of them in the top 10. So it's been impressive to see what Wilson has been able to put on over the first few races of this season. Obviously not in contention, as he joined really late in the calendar year to go for the chase or go for any championship implications. But for a driver to do that, we talk in other series on the KBueno Racing Network about rookies that have overall impressed and have become very efficient when they start, not afraid to put themselves out there and not afraid to show their outright pace. Wilson is just one of those drivers this season, alongside Walden, alongside Van Schaik, Whittington, and a few others who, if you look at the overall grand scheme of things, especially with Whittington and Wilson, they have been around this group of drivers. They just didn't find out about this league and join it until most recently. So now we're really just getting the band all back together from the old Sunoco Cup Series days. So Wilson continues to lead out in front. All 15 laps have gone to the North Carolinian as of now. There's the battle for what could be third place. Within a car length or two, Harlow has pulled away from Garrett Walden, who's now succumbing to the wrath of Cedric Hunter and Warren Kyle Keith. All those drivers, of course, in charge of the in-season challenge to bring us a good race from tonight and in Richmond next Sunday. But Whittington trying to fall back just a little bit, and that has allowed Harlow, who's pushing it a little more on his Goodyear Eagles in this first run, to try and look forward to a potential side-by-side effort for the last spot in the podium. Although everybody has remained single file, so it has not been too much of a difference over the first few laps. Field setting the tone very early. They do not want to scurry around and have trouble. They just want to run their own race and have their chance at going for the win later on. On board with the driver of the 45, the 7-time race winner this season, and surely locked himself into the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series chase a long time ago, Cedric Hunter. Chasing down Garrett Walden, who has now expanded to a higher line, moving up about a half groove there in turns 3 and 4. Big bump there in the middle of the corner. And Hunter so far matching the pace, but something you will notice about the way you drive these next-gen cars here at Nashville is that you do have to be very aware of the clean and dirty air. Right there is clean air for Hunter's Toyota as he's able to move to the inside. And of course that does create the effect and establishes what you saw there off of turn number 2, a car that is ultimately sideways. But when you hop into the middle of a line, especially with second all the way through the top 6 and even further on as they have now separated in this first run, you will see a lot of the understeery connection with the steering wheel. That is, of course, because of all that turbulent air that's coming from the driver in front. That allows the trailing car to have a bit worse handling race car and thus creates that understeery effect. But since Walden is leaving that half lane open, it's enough for Hunter to at least get the smidge of clean air and allows his car to rotate just a little bit better. So that freer condition from the Canadian is just all a result of Walden giving him a little more space than usual. You'll see drivers mostly tucked to the yellow line at the very bottom of the racetrack, but with enough rubber that's put in and with enough of the dynamic track model that has built up through iRacing over the last few months and over the last few builds, you'll see drivers experiment just a little more with those higher lanes and see if they can find a bit more grip. We're still 20 laps in, maybe a little while before the drivers can officially start experimenting and using that second lane to their benefit. However, it's just a matter of time before drivers do so, given the trend of this race early on. It has gone so far under the green flag. There's Walden again, under fire. Hunter pivoting. Great run off of turn number 4. You can use the apron down there here in Nashville. Hunter is still there. Hunter to the bottom, looking for 4th place. And Hunter finally completes the pass. Took him a little while, but the 45 car is there for 4th. And Walden will just have to wave back and see what he can do. Warren Kyle Keith is not too far away, about half second behind Walden Chevrolet. So there is going to be a bit of time that Walden can use and some elbow room in which he can try to use that run. But you saw it got very tight there off of turn number 2 and had to really weld that Chevrolet up. It can allow Keith to get in just a little bit closer to the driver of the 43 for the top 5 position. Everything stabilized here in the early portions of this race from Nashville. And there's Steven Stempion's Budweiser Chevrolet tapping into the Music City theme of Nashville Superspeedway, one of the few themed races that we'll have this year, and one of the last ones that we'll have until the NFL themed race that's going to happen later on this season alongside the throwback race that should happen by the Chase. And Stempion adorning the Elvis Presley colors with the Budweiser Chevrolet tonight, a paint scheme that he has run before. If you've watched Nashville races on the KBueno Racing Network, he's ran this before in this series and has also ran it in the 4Wide Racing TJ's Team Series when he used to run those on Wednesday nights. So Stempien using a very characteristic paint scheme in which he has grown very close to at this type of track, and obviously doesn't have to create a brand new design for it. So gets to use the paint scheme and still tap into the theme. Overall, he's one of the few Music City themed cars that are on this racetrack tonight. We'll tell you about them and more as the race continues on through what is now our longest and only green flag run of the night. Stempien has not been able to gain any ground on Wilson in the battle for the lead. You see that Chevrolet up the road. That's about 1.1 seconds clear of the driver of the 88. But the good thing about Stempien's placement is that he's about 7/10 clear of his teammate in Stephen Harlow, who runs in third. So while Stempien hasn't grown any closer to the driver in the race lead and in the cleanest of all the air, he is still maintaining a solid gap and thus pulling away a little bit from Harlow's Chevrolet. This is one of those venues where Stempien sees his specialty come to life, and alongside New Hampshire Motor Speedway, which was on the schedule last Sunday, and felt that he had the car to win. And on-track position, if you weren't looking at the penalty from the first overtime restart, Stempien would have been the race winner and would have had a third W of this 2026 season. Last time he officially reached Droppin in the Hammah Cup Series victory lane, it was out in Southern California at Auto Club many moons ago in a flag-to-flag affair. So Stempien still in that mindset of he's locked into the chase, that's for sure, but a win always cures every single open wound. So you'll listen on board with his Chevrolet as he carries through turns 1 and 2. Takes you ages to get on the throttle here in Nashville, especially with this higher horsepower output. And you've seen already from the drivers how they have separated. That's just the difference in skill, difference in discipline, and everything in between. As this Nashville Superspeedway, mostly single groove, is open to challenge any sort of driver, and it's one of those racetracks that does not typically fall in the 1.5 mile category. And it's much like Darlington, and it's got a different shape. It's got different levels of banking compared to all the other typical intermediate ovals we run. And so this track ultimately becomes a driver's specialty, or a driver's hampering one, where some just don't like this track at all and don't really feel confident in running here. And then you'll have drivers like Stempien, and as we see it so far, like a Zach Wilson, who can see a track like this and say, well, this is my forsuit. This is my exact type of place. This is my style of driving. I'm going to find a way to be as fast as I possibly can. And that enjoyment alone could make a driver faster. They don't put too much pressure on themselves. And then those who really don't have a good time here maybe think a little bit too much about how they can gain any lost speed that they find around this 1.33 mile concrete oval that has made itself very famous for being very hot in the summer months on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule, and obviously for being a driver's track if they are suited to this style of racing. Right on board with Justin Hendry, one of the few Toyota Camrys in this field. Him and Justin Erb now engaging in what used to be door-to-door combat between the 85 and the 20. Again, Erb trying to extend his overall gap to the top 12 cut line. He came into tonight 14 points away from Kip Easley, the driver who did not make tonight's affair, so he will immediately either be mathematically eliminated from chase contention or have to really deal with a must-win or a huge points night at Richmond Raceway next Sunday. Easley has been kind of on and off over the course of the season, as we've been told from Brandon Banks. His schedule just has not allowed him to be as competitive in this series and running as much as potentially he would like to, but those two going almost near side by side. Erb trying to carry to the inside as Hendry is trying to defend in the move for turn number 3. Here comes Erb down to the bottom, pivoting on the inside of the racetrack. The sun covered up by the clouds here in Lebanon, Tennessee. It's a mostly overcast afternoon here in Nashville, and very different from what we usually see at this track. Quite atypical. Usually we're seeing the sun bright and shiny on the racing surface, and as the concrete inhales all of that heat, it brings track temperatures to easily over triple digits and 110, 115, possibly as high as 140 degrees. But in this race today, it was categorized that this was going to be under the daylight, but it's a mostly cloudy condition, so only 86 degrees out there on the track. That's relatively cool. That is mostly a good thing for the field in terms of you won't have as much tire wear, and of course you have overall more grip when the temps are just a little bit lower than usual. However, you don't have the possibility for cars to separate a lot more and have those comers and goers on overall tire life. You'll have those that overcook their tires and become very slick. Those that wear out the right front tire and end up getting very tight. And that overall difference just creates the movement, a lot of which we see because of that here in Nashville, as this track isn't necessarily the most open to multi-groove racing from top to bottom. You're looking at maybe a lane and maybe a lane and a half, maybe 2 lanes at the very bottom that could help you work things out as you watch with Warren Kyle Keith, who probably has been the most experimentative of everyone in this field all season. We saw in Nashville over the course of these first 34. We saw in New Hampshire last Sunday. We've seen at plenty of tracks where usually the outside is not used, but Warren Kyle Keith says, why not? He's always the driver to try it out. He's always a man that likes to experiment with different ways his car can run, and if it gets him in the clean air, then that's really all that matters. But he's falling to the tracks of Charles Van Schaik, the 23 and the rookie driver, just getting in within a car length. So our closest battle inside the top 7 is going to be this one right here, as everyone else has frankly pulled away from each other, and that battle between Justin Erb and Justin Hendry is officially fleshed out. It's now about half a second between those two in the favor of the driver of the 20. There's Wilson continuing to lead. And someone who did not lead any laps in any of his starts in his Droppin the Hammah Cup Series career until last Sunday. He led 21 at New Hampshire before eventually being involved in some chaos that dropped him off to an 8th place finish and what would have been probably a top 5. But other than New Hampshire, this is the first time that Wilson has led over 21 laps, and now the most laps he's led in a single race in his Droppin the Hammah Cup Series career. He's been clearing ahead by a few car lengths, and although the gap is slowing down just a little bit to the driver of the 88, Stepien Chevrolet is just maintaining that gap, although he is a little bit faster that last time by, 30.558. So eventually this long run is starting to find itself in the hands of the Methuen, Massachusetts native, and Stepien is slowly reeling the 60 car of Zach Wilson in. Again, the idea of New Hampshire, how that could have been for the driver of the Chevrolet that's running in P2. Now Stepien looking for a way around as he gets closer. We'll wonder whether if he slows down, because he'll get more in the dirty air of the driver of the 60, and whether that will allow drivers like Stephen Harlow and Cedric Hunter to be able to make any kinds of moves in the rest of this top 5. But our first 40 laps as they come across the line have been all green flag racing. This is 100% fuel on the fuel tanks of these NASCAR Next Gen Cup cars, so you can go a little while, probably around 50 to 60 laps on a tank of gas. So if we remain under green, we'll look to about 10 to 11 laps from now where that window will start to open, and once it does, we'll start to see whether any drivers elect for a proper over or undercut. We saw at New Hampshire Motor Speedway how things really changed over the course of the night. Hunter and Perusinia put themselves in a one-stop strategy around halfway, and then everyone else had garnered for a two-stop strategy, given the way the race had fallen with the early yellows, and then it developed into a long green flag endurance race. So whether Warren is the first driver to undercut, we'll just keep an eye on that, but still a little bit to go before we eventually get to time and decisions on pit lane. Here's the onboard camera from Stepien, slowly creeping in to create our first proper battle for the lead all night long. Stepien had to hold off a couple cars just to remain in second when they came off of turn number 2 on the opening lap of the race. And now the fastest car in the middle of this group, a hair slower than the race leader this time by, but overarching storyline is that this fight is within half a second. Stepien closing in on the race leader. Now within around 0.4 of a second that last time by, Wilson was the faster car, but again, you can categorize that with clean air that's on the front nose of Wilson's machine and how Stepien now has to fight through what is the very drastic dirty air difference from earlier in this race when he was about 1 1/2 and 1/10 back. And how much that does make a difference over the course of the night. It very much does. You do have a car that handles like a boat when you're in the middle of traffic, and then as soon as you break free, it starts to open up. And you start to feel the effects of why Nashville is considered a tire chewer. You don't see any of the wearing on the right front tire, and it all goes to the right rear. So when that pressure does end up on the right rear, you don't have as much downforce underneath the racing car. You don't have as much of the give with this car not having side force. And you also have more horsepower under the hood of this car. So you do have a possibility to get more loose than tight. Some drivers like that effect, though, in an attempt to try and neutralize the overall weight and balance of the car, and also the wearing of the tires, and make sure that they can at least maintain some level of time without falling too drastically off the initial pace, as the drivers have now fallen off at least 1/2 second compared to their best lap set in the first few laps of tonight's event. And here comes Stepien. He is now within 3 car lengths, but so are his teammates and his other drivers right behind him. Stephen Harlow running in 3rd, has garnered within 1/2 second on the 2nd place car, and it's 3/10 back to Cedric Hunter. This top 4 have pulled away. Then a 3-car trio that starts with Garrett Walden, and it ends with Charles Van Schaik running back in 7th, and then it's the rest of the field to figure it out amongst themselves. Stepien is closing in. He is almost there. Wilson is starting to feel the heat. These two got into each other at New Hampshire last Sunday. Will there be a part 2 to the action, or will Stepien make this a quick and easy blow and end to the interlude? 48 laps complete here from Nashville Superspeedway. Gap within 2 car lengths. Stepien is near to the race leader on the back straightaway. And the question is, if you are Zach Wilson, how do you play things differently? Do you let this run? Do you let Stepien fight his way through the dirty air? And how panicked do you get if you see those other two in the back half of the top 4 start immediately closing in? That last time by, Hunter and Walden were the faster cars than anyone in this main group. Walden is still a ways behind, but Hunter is right on the tail of Stephen Harlow, and they are slowly closing in on this battle for the race lead coming off of turn 4. Here comes Stepien, a beautiful run at the exit of the final corner, gets him right near Wilson. He'll tally to the inside. Peek underneath his nose is there. Fight for the lead in turn 1. It is quick and painless. Steven Stepien, the new race leader from Nashville Superspeedway. Beautiful job done by Stepien to make the move underneath. Wilson did not offer any resistance. And now it's a drop in the Hammah teammate of Stepien and Stephen Harlow to try and make a move to the inside and carry his weight, and also try to make it a drop in the Hammah team 1-2 to make things just a little bit harder. Here comes the send underneath in turn 3. Had to nail the binders just to get to the apex of the corner. Wilson holds him tight, pinching at the exit of turn 4. It allows Hunter to get just a little bit closer. Fight for second back to turn 1. Wilson nose ahead. And Harlow makes his way through on the bottom, so Wilson cannot play the defense any further. It allows Hunter to squeeze his way to the inside. They make contact as they come to turn 3. Hunter to the bottom. Wilson to play defense, and it cannot work again. Wilson dropping 3 in the span of maybe a few laps or so. Hunter up to 3rd. So in one fell swoop, Zach Wilson has fallen from the pole sitting position, and he's dropped all the way to 4th as this fuel window has officially come into play. 53 laps complete, from this virtual Nashville Superspeedway. Hunter is on in the fight for second as they come back to turn one. The bright pink Hello Kitty Toyota Camry trying to make his move on the driver from Vermont. As Wilson has fallen back, and Wilson has come down pit road. So the first driver is in, and it is the pole sitter. Wilson on the pole for the first time in his career, and he leads a bunch of laps. He leads the most laps we've seen from him in his Droppin the Hammah Cup Series tenure thus far. And the driver in his 5th career start in on pit road for the first time tonight. And he seems to be one of the only drivers that is in this time. So the earliest bird of the bunch. And on the lead lap in this top 10 have come down pit road. As for the rest of this field, nobody else has decided their time is right now. It'll take a little while before they eventually reach the end of their fuel window. It is Wilson, the only man in. And now we ask the question, how long will it take before the rest of the field follow suit? Harlow under heavy fire from Hunter. They continue to run nose to tail as they exit turn 4. And nobody else eventually coming in on the pit lane as it stands right now. Warren Kyle Keith is not in either. And so it will just take a while before we find another driver properly on pit road. And now we have it. The Bandmade Ford Mustang Dark Horse of Richard Swabley is in this time by a lap 56. You look at the rig from the driver of the 32. And the music theme race car as well, the music theme shirt. He was part in the last themed race that we had, which was based off the WWE and wrestling. Taking a sip as he relaxes for just a bit as the field is now starting to make their cycle known. Here comes Warren Kyle Keith, challenge to the inside. Him and Charles Van Schaik running side by side for 5th off turn 2. So Keith cannot stay in front of Van Schaik, and that'll put the rookie inside the top 5. Van Schaik trying, of course, to be the leading rookie driver in the driver's standings, and did overtake Garrett Walden for about a week, but then that quickly changed as the 43 got back into action. And as soon as Walden established his place and continues to run nicely in the top 10, still yet a race victory for either one of those rookie drivers, but still points good enough to make it into the chase. And at this point of the season, for them, that's all they need. Just solid races, uneventful affairs, and it's not to be said that they will bounce out of the top 12 by any means necessary. They've accrued enough points over the course of the regular season to where even if they do have a pair of bad races tonight and at Richmond next Sunday, they most likely will still be okay. They'll make the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series chase. They'll still be in the conversation for the top 12. Now, the biggest point of conversation that you have when the chase starts is where you are in the points. The last thing you want to do is be too far behind in an overall points tally with a long chase format to where you fall so far behind the 8 ball and then you end up mathematically eligible to be out of the championship. You don't have a chance to gain the top spot, and you don't put yourself in the best place when it comes down to the final race of the season at Charlotte. So for the most part, Walden and Van Schaik know their ticket is mostly secured, even by starting this race. Even if they don't finish well, more often than not, them just being here in a group of drivers that now fluctuated over the course of the season and are now highlighted by red, which means they're mathematically ineligible for the chase. It means they'll be fine. They'll still be in the top 12, and they'll most likely still have a shot to go for the championship. It's, of course, where you want to be, the momentum carrying into that first race at Chicagoland, because we've noted over the course of the season when the temperature drops and the momentum falls and you end up in a mid-season lull, it cannot be fun behind the wheel. So you get that mentally overstimulating factor. You feel a little overwhelmed. You feel negative. And that attitude could very well carry into the chase where you just start off on the wrong foot and you end up in that pit until the end of the season without giving yourself a proper shot at the title. But if you start off the regular season pretty well, you maybe taper off, but you start to regain momentum, or you're very much in the best form of your series at that point in the season, you can hop into the chase with plenty of high expectations, plenty of high hopes, and an overall boosted morale. And we know boosted morale mentally behind the wheel does many things for a driver. It can't magically fix their races, but it can make their bad days better. and it can make their good days even better as well. So you think about what a driver like Weldon and Van Schijk need to do, having good races so far tonight, those two drivers 4th and 5th in the running order as we've gone through 63 green flag laps. So remember, Wilson had come down pit road earlier in the run. He's now joined by at least 4 other drivers that did hit the pit lane. We talked about Richard Swavely, but Matthew Perusini, driver of the 96, who was one of the highlights of the strategy call at New Hampshire last Sunday, also came down pit road around 2 laps ago. Justin Erb and James Kunkel have also come in on the pit lane. The pair of Fords have took their service for the first time tonight. Wilson is now the oldest tire car out of this group as we see it, as those that have already hit pit lane, as Hunter dives the inside, points and fires to the exit of turn 2. This will surely make Stempion's tenure at the lead a lot easier before pit stops eventually come up. Hunter again, attempt in turn 3. Harlow tries to pinch to the very bottom. It cannot quite be enough as Hunter finds his way to second. Textbook move at the exit of 4. Hunter up to the runner-up spot. And our first yellow of the night comes up. It is Warren Kyle Keith. That's involved, spun across the front straightaway. And after we were waiting for the field to visit pit road for the first time tonight, it is the St. Augustine, Florida native of Warren Kyle Keith. Brings us our first yellow at lap 66. And it was trouble off of turn number 4. We saw a drop-off from Keith very early on. Tires seemed to have worn down a lot more than he would have liked. It was him and Brandon Banks, nose to tail, as they were coming off of turn number 4. Oh, and just lost it. And nearly about had help from Brandon Banks, who was trying to slow down and get out of the way. And a stabilized hit to the outside wall. Not too drastic to take him out of things, but of course one that will lessen his morale. As we'll take the onboard look, here is the sights and sounds of how Keith went around off turn 4. See, just fighting that car for all it's worth. And we talked about that bump, a very nasty one at the exit of turn number 4. That can easily get this car all unraveled. We have seen the vehicles already getting sideways over the course of this race just due to the way this Nashville Superspeedway is. But Keith now the first victim in our first yellow of the night, throwing at lap number 66. So as the field have stayed out for the most part, they'll come in on pit road, and it should be 4 fresh tires and fuel for the entire field. Of course, the pit stops lessen in time after the recent iRacing update that now reflects what real life looks like on pit road for these next-gen cars. 10 seconds clear and 10 seconds in away. Steven Stempien wins the race off of pit road, and will continue to try and lead this race as it progresses on our first yellow of the night after our longest initial green flag run of this race at around 66 laps with only a few drivers that came down pit road. They have also revisited the pit lane. So Wilson, Kunkel, Perusini, Erb, and a few others have also revisited the pit lane, whether it be for tires or for a splash of fuel. So let's quickly get a word with the driver of the 88 Chevrolet as he continues to lead this affair. Steven, you got a copy with us?
What's going on, buddy?
All right, Steven, good to talk to you once again. We know this race has been a little bit different in the sense of the strategy that went green. You all came down pit road this time by. What has the car felt like, and what have you taken away from that first run?
It's definitely, it's a little loose off, tight in. You know, felt good to get some clean air, but just trying different lines, seeing what I could do to pass Zach, and you know, I was kind of hawking it in and diming it off to get a good run, and that helped into one. But we'll see how the track goes once the sun goes down and the lights come out. Might change a little bit. We'll see.
All right, well, Steven, a good-looking car tonight with Elvis Presley on the hood and all around, and great to see you running well on this first run. Best of luck on the restart.
Thanks, buddy.
Steven Stepien, of course, finishing tail end of the lead lap after the penalty that he got after the first overtime attempt to restart at New Hampshire. He will lead this field after our first yellow comes out with 69 laps complete from the Music City and Nashville Superspeedway. Stepien and Hunter revisit the Echo Park Automotive Restart Zone for the first restart of the night. Green flag back in the air. Stepien out in front to turn 1. And it's a great start for the Chevrolet and the Toyota. 1-2 and his teammate third. In Harlow, battle for 5th and 6th. Garrett Walden, Jesse Whittington, Brandon Banks, and many others get into the mix off turn 4, but it is still Stepien in front by a few car lengths coming back to the front straightaway. And it is a gaggle of cars in the middle of this top 10. Walden squeaks by. Muscarella in front of Chuck Stevens, Hendry, Keith, and Wilson among those that are at the back of this field for the first time tonight. Wilson, the pole sitter, having to scourge through the traffic. And it's Keith trying to make sure he gets around nicely as Stepien remains out in front. A few car lengths over Cedric Hunter. And the battle for 5th continues to heat up. Only about a car length between Whittington and Brandon Banks and the driver of the 5. There's the onboard look with Banks. Patient on the throttle, the winner from last Sunday. And was very surprised to be called the race winner at the end of that. It was a very close finish between himself and Garrett Walden and Cedric Hunter, and all of those drivers in that overtime attempt, which technically was the second and final of the night. But after Banks was announced the victor, was just very shell-shocked to find out he was officially the winner of the race. But that does help his case in trying to take over the points lead in the driver's standings. We mentioned how great of a season it's been for Cedric Hunter. Banks has had a very consistent year without the wins. Hunter has been on the opposite end of that, where he's won more races than he's finished well in. And so the 5 car with a much-needed boost of morale in the final races of this regular season. He currently holds into the top 5 as he's gained positions. Remember, he was the first driver not to take a time in qualifying tonight. So it's been surely a move up to the field to note of for the driver for Drinkin' Bros Racing. And there he is, trying to chase down Charles Van Schaik, who's back in the top 5 again. Remember that early battle with Warren Kyle Keith that got the GOAT Racing diecast Ford Mustang Dark Horse in the position and trying to chase down Stephen Harlow, as he's also trying to chase down Cedric Hunter. Those two all still very close with each other, and we noted that at least in the first green flag run of the night, where it clearly became about aggression very early on, and then as the race developed, and most importantly, as it stayed under green, you had the battles lessen overall. You had drivers thinning out over the course of the night. And you just had the effects of the best drivers on pace were already at the front. Everyone else was figuring out their strategy and their race together. And so you just had that overwhelming stretch of the field, spaghettification, if you will, of everybody in the group. And that's where Zach Wilson is trying to cut his teeth in what is now positioned for 9th on the Simrat Market Chevrolet of Chuck Stevens. Wilson again hitting the earliest of everyone in the top 5. And we were also expecting green flag pit stops from everyone at the front. Just that yellow came out at lap number 66. Keith, who was probably eventually going to come down pit road as well, maybe on the undercut strategy. He also came in as he was the car that spun off of turn number 4. He is still dealing with the effects of his race car as he's trapped back in 13th and has not been able to gain spots since the drop of this restart. But Wilson now for the first time properly in dirty air. And it's a big time question mark for many of those drivers that stay so long of a race at the very front, especially when they qualify on the pole. It's the best case scenario because you get to lead all the laps, you get to feel the best behind the wheel when you don't have dirty air But then when you get put into a dirtier position, whether somebody passes you for the lead or whether it's a group of cars that are in front, how do you respond? That has been some of the biggest tests of wit and skill for drivers in this next-gen era, is how do they respond when the turbulent air becomes free and when the free air becomes turbulent air, just vice versa. And the very big debate of where would you rather be and how do you attack the racetrack and the race car as a result of that phenomenon. Here comes Hendry to the inside, the Toyota Camry taking the bottom of Stevens, who's now just holding on for dear life as Perusini makes a charge to the bottom, and that battle for 11th will continue as they chase back to turn number 1. For the most part, though, business as usual. Never mind. Caution flag comes out. Richard Swavely sideways off turn 4. And this camera pointed up so high, I don't know whether that was from the wreck or not for Swavely. But you can only see his hat now, so only wondering what his emotions are like after the spin. And seems to be a single car incident, although some heavy damage on the back end of his Ford Mustang Dark Horse. So we'll take a look at how this all transpired. Our second yellow thrown. Looks like there was already damage on behalf of his car. And it was the same problem that befell Keith earlier on in the race under the green flag run. Car just got loose off the bump in turn 4 and just went around for the harmless spill. Didn't hit the outside wall and just carried it to the inside grass. So he already had the rear end damage from earlier on in the race. Just eventually now the damage of flat spotted tires as the field catches up to the iRacing official pace car on our second yellow of the evening in race number 18 of the season. So now it's a question mark of, do you come down pit road or do you elect to stay out? Looks like a few drivers come in. Pair of rookies, Charles Van Schaik and Jesse Whittington, are the ones that visit pit road this time by. So they will take the gamble after only being on this set of tires for 13 laps. Remember, there are limited tire sets available for the field, so there is that concentrated idea of how many sets do you want to have by the end, how many do you expect to use, and again, we're not even halfway. We're still 18 laps from the lap 100 mark and the halfway cross flags of this event. So a very interesting call to see what Whittington and Charles Van Schaik are going to do. Now, it doesn't guarantee that they go in for just tires, although from the times we're watching on our sheet, 10.3 for Whittington, 10.1 for Van Schaik. Definitely appears like a 4-tire call. Some of those also in the method of trying to save some fuel and add the extra fuel they need to make it a little bit longer on a stint. So if we do end up on a long green flag run, whether you're on 4 fresh tires or none or 2, then it could be one of those cases where you find yourself with still a longevity play to stay out as long as everyone else does and hope that the overcut in general with your track position, if you gain it on this restart, could be able to help in enough time. There are the other cars coming down pit road. Looks like Van Schaik, Keith, and a few others are just revisiting for a splash of fuel, and out they go. There's Walden and Justin Erb in the background as Warren Kyle Keith goes up. Looks like tires that are going to be slapped on, right side tires for Keith. So it appears a 2-tire call that he tried on the initial pit stop came down the second time, had to get second guess and say, hey, 4 tires will be better in general. So he used the overall tire set, and he'll be back out on the track. Should recycle to around the 15th or 16th place position. Has one of those Music City themed cars. This is representing Genesis and their 40th anniversary of Invisible Touch. That's also a Target sponsored car. Target, of course, getting very much into the music scene whenever an artist like Taylor Swift or other artists drop any albums, and their vinyls are available for store exclusively in Target. And so you'll have the sponsored Target segments where they do have artists on their cars, and Warren, of course, getting into the Music City spirit as some others do here tonight. Not many of them doing it, but those who are, we definitely appreciate them getting into the aesthetics and the fun of the themed races in this 2026 season to get the drivers excited, and we're excited for this green flag restart. Second one of the night. It's a bobble from the inside lane and a spill between the 2 leaders. Hunter and Stepien go around to the inside grass. Will that be a yellow flag? And it looks like we're going to stay green, so most crucially and most consequentially, Brandon Banks is going to take the lead on a race that continues green. Stepien frustrated on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And now the yellow's thrown from race control. So they've had enough. Cedric Hunter involved in that as well. A huge stack up on the bottom of row number 1 from the race leader. Gets everyone up in arms, and our third yellow thrown in quick succession. What has happened here? Here's the restart. Everything business as usual up until this point. They enter the Echo Park Automotive restart zone. And whether it was a misshift from Stepien or what, just looked like the car did not go. Very different from the last start where he went swimmingly out in front. Hunter gets tangled into the mess. The two cars go sliding. And we didn't see any other extracurricular activities when they came around to turns 1 and 2. Looked like all the other drivers for the most part ended up okay until they eventually threw the yellow. Race control said it was more than enough for them to throw the yellow flag. And it is the driver who has led a bulk of laps tonight that ends up involved in this accident on lap number 84. So here's the onboard look from Stepien. Take a listen. Try to perk up the ears and see what happened. It looked like he was stuck in 5th gear. So he was still in 5th gear trying to save fuel. That's a method that drivers do before the green flag restart, but then eventually they end up in the gear that's right for them. It looked like Stepien just didn't shift down into any of the gears. He realized as soon as they came to the restart zone, and then eventually it just went all awry for the driver of the 88. Here's the onboard look from Hunter. Thought that he went right on the restart. Obviously didn't want to jump, but it was a mistake from the driver of the 88, and it is Stepien that pays the price as he officially comes down Perry Road. It looks like they did take their set of Goodyear Eagles, so they have now equalized with Keith, Walden, and the other drivers that have come in. So that's going to leave Brandon Banks in the race lead. And it's now probably the second week in a row where antics involving the 88 car have given Brandon Banks the benefit of the doubt. And he'll be our third different race leader. Just an unbelievable sequence of events that has occurred here at Nashville. And all of a sudden, the best contenders of the night are trapped in 14th and 15th, rather 15th and 16th on this green flag restart. So they'll occupy row number 8, but they'll be at the very back of this field. Again, most of everyone have stayed out on this recent green flag stint. Make that, at the moment, 9 cars that have yet to visit pit road, rather 8. As Charles Van Schaik did come in a few laps ago, but he did gain some track position, so he is back in 7th place. Make that 8 cars that have now stayed out on the racetrack, hoping that their tires can last. And with the trend of this race going, if it stays green, could have a different play of mindset. But if we end up still with the flurry of yellows that we've encountered over the last few laps, and maybe that changes the mindset just a little bit. Sun continues to set here in Lebanon, Tennessee. What's been a very atypical, cool race here in Lebanon, but the sun in the horizon seems to continue to go down. We have lights here, so we can go into the night sky on what is still a long race left in the books. 13 laps before the halfway mark tonight from Nashville Super Speedway. Great green flag restart from the 5 of Brandon Banks. It's Chuck Stevens and Zach Wilson to lead them for the battle for second back to turn 1. We'll see how long it takes before the fresh tire cars eventually bring their way into the foreground. Right now, no ground, no gain of momentum. Here comes Hunter to the bottom of the progressive Ford Mustang. That's James Kunkel in the back half of this field. That's a fight currently up for grabs in 15th. Kevin Roy on the outside. Keith and Hunter pointing the bottom. Stepien's the leader of this group. He has worked his way back into 11th underneath Justin Hendry as they come off to the back straightaway. And the Budweiser Chevrolet has made his move back to the inside. He is hungry to get to the front of this field where he feels he belongs. Muscarella putting the fire to Chuck Stevens. Muscarella to a race-high third off turn 4. And contact in turn 1. Harlow and Stevens going at it for 4th. Now we watch where Stemping continues to make his ascension through the field. He's now up to 10th. Carrying behind Garrett Walden in the 43. And Chuck Van Schaik making his way under. As Stemping forces his nose to the inside of Walden. He wants that spot. He is trying to pull away from Center Cunner and literally everyone else right now as Van Schaik continues to man the inside ground. He takes a charge at Stevens. A slap at it in turn 3. Dive underneath on the brakes. Can't make the apex to the yellow line, but he is still there. Stevens fights back. Those two side by side for 7th and 6th place as they come back to turn 1. Stevens wins the fight. Stemping now locked beneath 2 cars in Swavely and Whittington that are now side by side in their battle for 8th place. And how long will this last? And Whittington nudges Swavely out of the way. Had to get right up to the outside wall. It's Walden, Keith, Hendry make it 3 wide as they come to the front straightaway. Swavely leaves everybody in the back. And it is Zach Wilson trying to hunt down the driver of the 5 after pitting the earliest of anyone in the top leading group through the first and longest green flag run of the night. Wilson is right there trying to tally in. He is faster than Banks by nearly a full 1/10 of a second. Drops off in the middle of 3 and 4. Banks will hold on to the reprieve from now on with just about 6 laps to go until the halfway mark here in Lebanon. There's a look on board, our Charlie Bayer Photography onboard camera with the driver of the 6 car. Harlow with back-to-back 10th place finishes came the way to Indianapolis and in New Hampshire, both of which he started in 9th place. Plenty of top 10s. 5 of his last 6 have been in this realm as he chases down Alex Muscarella, the highest we've seen the 48 car tonight. And so good news for the Red Bull Chevrolet Muscarella, who found the open door at Daytona, won his first career Droppin the Hammah Cup Series race, and have since had a back and forth regular season campaign, trying to point his way into the chase. Trapped back in 3rd as Harlow continues to hunt him down while the top 2 have pulled away. And the fresh tire power led by Steven Stampian in the 8 car and Charles Van Schaik in the 6th position. Well, they have not gained any ground. They have stabilized. In fact, they have just maintained their track position as it's gone through. So we haven't seen any significant gaining of track position for either of those drivers. And that probably puts in the perspective of those who stayed out, whether that was the right move. And obviously Hunter and Stempien coming down for the tire set in a force of necessity rather than an actual choice that they make. That's because they both went around and lost all that track position early. And now trying to regain it back. Stevens continues on the drop-off. He has fallen back to 12th place after restarting in the top 5. And Hunter giving a nudge to warn Kyle Keith. Not the first time we see those two get in arms with one each other and make contact. That will be for the last spot in this current running top 10. Field is stabilized so far with Brandon Banks out in the race lead. It has been an interesting one to say the least from Lebanon, Tennessee. Longest green flag run of the night, then buried by a few yellows, and we're back under green with the 2-time winner and the driver second in points, trying to get back to the chase with heavy momentum and win a race back-to-back for the first time in his career. Don't go anywhere as we continue coverage of race number 18 of the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series season from Nashville Superspeedway.
Experience the world's most legendary racing events with iRacing. iRacing special events allow any member to compete in full-length multiplayer races based on some of the biggest events in motorsports all year round. Compete in virtual endurance races such as the Daytona 24, Spa 24, and the Nürburgring 24 Hours. Take on some of the toughest races on the NASCAR schedule, such as the Daytona 500. We have events from disciplines all across the racing world, from the Indianapolis 500 to the Chili Bowl, from the Bathurst 1000 to the Crandon Championship. Our endurance special events utilize iRacing's team feature, where members can sign up and race together on their own team, swapping drivers throughout the race. Other events utilize iRacing Super Sessions, where you're not only racing against those on track, but against every driver taking part. And as every race progresses, watch and feel the track change with progressive time of day, dynamic weather and rain, and dynamic track debris and surface changes. Take on your favorite discipline or try a brand new racing challenge with our biggest races of the year, the iRacing Special Events. Learn more at iracing.com/special-events.
Back live from the virtual Nashville Superspeedway, where we continue coverage of race 18 in the 2026 Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series season right here on the KBueno Racing Network. Kenneth Bueno with you through all the coverage as we had a flurry of yellows over the last few laps, so a green flag restart has kept us green so far, and you're riding on board with the driver who has dominated this race for the most part, Steven Stepien, trying to carry the inside of Jesse Whittington. He is one of the first few drivers in this field on the freshest set of Goodyear Eagles after a restart snafu between himself and Cedric Hunter after they went spinning on the front straightaway. They both came down pit road and both took 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles. The majority of the field at the front have yet to take in a stop. They came in a little while ago, coming in on their 40th lap on the green flag stint. Our longest run went 66 laps to begin this race. We haven't had a run longer than that, and we haven't had any semblance of green flag pit stops in a majority sense. We've seen a little bit of it. For the most part, it continues to remain green with a ton of fighting across the way. Brandon Banks is still your race leader as they come across the line to lap 107, the two-time race winner who achieved victory last week in Loudoun, New Hampshire after it was given to him from a penalty dealt to Steven Stepien on the first overtime restart. Banks continuing that momentum right now. The driver's second in the driver's standings, locked into the chase this season, but trying to do well and keep that momentum high, as the Drinkin' Bros Racing Chevrolet is the only one on his team that's representing the group here tonight from Lebanon. There's Cedric Hunter, who also came down pit road with Steven Stepien. Them and Warren Kyle Keith, 3 of the marquee drivers in the top 5 early. They have not been able to move up through this field. They are still trapped from 8th to 10th. So although we have seen tires matter just a little bit here on this concrete Nashville surface, it probably goes back to the idea of, hey, we're not at a hot track surface like we potentially think we are, and we usually used to see here. And now it's just a whole different scenario where you're just worried about trying to keep the tires underneath you and trying to keep the track position and or gain if you can. It's been quite a premium for drivers like Stepien and Hunter and Keith. All of them have gone through a bit of a fall off before eventually working their way up through the field. It just has not been an easy journey in the slightest. Zach Wilson has kept the race leader honest. Those two have been close by at least 2 to 3 car lengths within each other. Now, there hasn't been a proper battle for the lead. No engagement from Wilson yet. But the pole sitter tonight on his first career pole in his Droppin the Hammah Cup Series tenure over what is now his 5th career start tonight, has done very well for himself to regain ground after losing position, dropped to 4th in the opening run. Then when the yellow came out, he had already come down pit road and he was way back in the field. He re-came on pit road with the rest of the field, so he had to continue to wallow in his track position that was lost. Obviously, that happened before all of the recent drama with the restart and Wilson being able to gain position as opposed to the others who have fallen through the field. Wilson stayed out like Banks, and they just took advantage of the situation on track position. And now Wilson is one of the faster cars in this top 5. He is just yet to break the plane between himself and Brandon Banks, as those two have been trapped within a few car lengths of each other. And that, of course, means the most dirty air between drivers in the middle of a pack. How about Matthew Pericini, driver of the 96, made headlines at New Hampshire, although the strategy didn't quite work out for the driver here, as he ended up in that one-stop strategy alongside Cedric Hunter. We questioned for a while whether that was the call to win the race. Pericini had the better car in the long run. He got around Hunter on the strategy, and then obviously when Keith got around on fresh tires, it became all for naught. Pericini had a great race regardless, led a few laps and was out in front. Pericini ended up finishing 5th in that New Hampshire Motor Speedway race, and it was his first start since May 17th of this year when he worked with the field at Talladega Superspeedway and ended up finishing in 22nd place after a rough night. He's making contact on the front straightaway, leaning on each other to Charles Van Schaik, the two going at it for the top 5 in turn 1. All the physicality, Van Schaik trying to muscle Pericini out of the way, and it doesn't work quite yet. They'll remain door-to-door. Pericini clears, Chevrolet out in front. Van Schaik, another large lunge in the middle of turn 3, and this time he's got it. Pericini wants the crossover, can't quite get there. Whittington and Stepien are hunting right behind a 4-car train led by a prancing Ford Mustang. Van Schaik, the rookie, in the top 5 once again. And this could easily trigger a domino effect for all those fresh tire cars if they are able to find their way through. Happened with Stepien there as he attempted to get around the 94 car of Jesse Whittington. And now the Cypress Racing Academy Chevrolet trying to play some more defense. Charlie Bauer Photography onboard camera with the driver of the 94. And there you see his mentality on holding off Stepien, but most importantly, attacking on Pericini, the fellow Chevrolet in front. Those two are teammates, by the way. And we've seen over the course of the season how the team structure has changed, the power level of it all. Not only with the amount of drivers on a given team, but how dominant they are any given week. Category 5 Esports broke in half as Zachary Hall went from Season 1 champion to a part-time effort here in Season 2. He was around at New Hampshire Motor Speedway last week, but for example, he is not here tonight. He dominated and won Sonoma, but those have been really his only points-paying efforted races this season, apart from the All-Star race, if you want to count that as a third start this year. But they have dropped off, although Hunter has stepped up his level of dominance. He is the only car on his team. Drinkin' Bros Racing had a dominant season in 2025 with Lawson Peel, who won 9 races. Brandon Banks won a couple. Those two occupied half of the championship four alongside Category 5 Esports. And now DBR has dwindled to one full-time driver in Brandon Banks. Lawson Peel didn't re-up for season 2. Kip Easley was around for a little while, but he has not, with his schedule, been able to attend all of the races, so he's here on a rather part-time basis as well. And then you have the likes of DTH, which have been probably the most considerate team in a group alongside SKM, where their bulk of members have stayed for the most part in the season and have worked together. But Cypress Racing Academy, they have grown overnight. They have Chuck Stevens. They put in Jesse Whittington as the star rookie driver. They put Perusini in as a new driver as well. And then they most recently added Zach Wilson, who does not embrace the overall number brand and the font that the other Chevrolets like to use on the team. But Wilson still was happy to be embraced by the Cypress Racing guys, and he has very much made them proud as a first-time rookie and trying to seal off what would be his first career win, as he remains right tucked behind the leader in Brandon Banks. And those two, by the way, have pulled away to the tune of about a second or more over Stephen Harlow, who is now settled into the podium spot with Alex Muscarella, the two DTH teammates, running 3rd and 4th. So as the night continues from Lebanon, Tennessee, 80 laps to go. And what other than the first run is our longest green flag stretch of the night, 53 laps. We saw drivers, of course, go to 66 without any ensuing penalties on fuel tank limit. They were able to make it all the way through. Wilson was one of those major undercutting drivers. Of course, could be very different here that he's running second, and obviously on the same playing field as a bulk of the drivers in the half of the top 10. But now the question becomes, how long do they go on their stint, and how much does it affect the likes of Stempian, Hunter, and even Warren Kyle Keith, who came down pit road under the most recent yellow flag? They're now ticking down lap 36 of their given run. So it is going to take a little longer for them to eventually find their way in. And that will be probably the food for thought, right? When you come down pit road, how long with the race you want to go before you come in? What type of timing do you want to have? How fresh of tires do you want to have for a run late enough in the event? And that was obviously the big question mark as to whether you can make it on 1 or 2 stops at the end of New Hampshire before, of course, the late race yellows changed everything. But even in that moment, we were talking about a 1 stop possible where you could stretch it all the way to 1 stop, or if you need to make at least 2. Now, with this 80 lap to go mark, assuming the drivers can make it at least 15 to 20 more laps, then they should be okay until the end. From there, it's not really a conversation about fuel. It's just a matter of tires and when do you want to have the freshest set. But of course, that still comes into mind for Wilson, Banks, Harlow, Muscarella, all of the drivers that have stayed out until this point, is the play just to pit when you run out of gas? Or is the mindset to save a bit of fuel and hope that you can extend the run just for a little bit longer? You saw the gap between the leaders extended tenfold to now 0.7 of a second. So Wilson even further back, had a couple mistakes running in the wake of Brandon Banks' Chevrolet, but no sign of saving or slowing down from Wilson, and it appears the same is going to be held for the South Carolinian of Banks, the 4-time winner in his career. I don't think that they're going to try and save any kind of fuel unless maybe you're back in the top 5 or maybe top 6 if you're Perusini and a few others. It just doesn't come to me that they're going to be saving fuel, especially knowing that Field went 66 on their run. We don't know how extended they can go, whether they can go much longer than 66 or whether 66 was close to the fuel window for them. Just a big question mark, but we know at least after a certain point in this race, especially around lap 140 and maybe even around lap 135 rather, it could be more than enough for the drivers to make it on one final stop. So all to think about in these waning moments as we enter the home stretch of this 18th round. Of course, next week will be decision day. We have 5 drivers that locked in to the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series chase. That goes from Cedric Hunter in the lead of it all to Steven Stepien, who is in the top 5. Garrett Walden was the first driver not locked in 6th. And then you had some of the others in the mix. This huge send by Charles Van Schaik trying to muscle out the way. Alex Muscarella couldn't work off turn 4. And here comes Perusini to the inside for 5th. Stay single file for now. But back to the conversation about the chase. Cedric Hunter locked himself in. Brandon Banks, Charles Van Schaik, who you're watching right now in 5th. Warren Kyle Keith and Steven Stepien. They have already assured the golden ticket. They're going to the chase no matter what, just given the way they have planted their season so far. Now, Garrett Walden is 6th. Jesse Whittington is 7th in points. His car runs in 7th on the racetrack out of track position. Alex Muscarella, who runs currently in 4th, is 8th in the standings. Then it's Stephen Harlow, Chuck Stevens, who extended his gap to the cut line, Kevin Roy, who is running in 14th right now, who's 11th in standings, and Justin Erb, who just had to sway off Kip Easley and Richard Swavely. Erb right now is 1 spot ahead of Swavely in 15th. Jaden Porter and James Kunkel are in the fight as well. Kunkel 71 points adrift, although he is running last in 18th place as it stands, and Jaden Porter has not showed up for the last few weeks, so it's not a conversation of whether the Kentucky native and the multi-time winner this season is going to be able to point his way into the chase on a drop-off for the 82 in attendance. As here comes Van Schaik looking for one more in this run. 70 laps to go. Parasini wants to follow in the wake. The Go Racing diecast Ford Mustang stays planted and fires through the bump off turn 4, but no can do to clear Muscarella. Still side by side, coming back to turn 1. Van Schaik trying to assure his spot, and he does. Now Muscarella, damage control in turn 3. Oh, Parasini sent it in there. Car loose in the middle of the apex. Whittington invited to the party and denies his opportunity to make an entry to the inside, as well as Stepien, who holds position right behind. All these cars very close to each other, so there could be, if there's one mistake from any given one of them, especially knowing where Stepien, Hunter, and Keith are relative to the group on strategy, where they know they can go longer, they may not try to push the issue that much, understanding that there will be the pit stops eventually from the front leading group. It's just a matter of how long will they go. Front 3 on lap 64 of their stint, crossing the line for 65. No sign that they're coming in. Harlow did make his way to 2nd, so there has been a drop-off on tires for Wilson's machine overall. Not possibly going to drop back any further than 3rd in this run, but does have to be very careful on his mindset to not drop off anymore. And Harlow's been able to move his way by, now 8 tenths away from the leader in Brandon Banks, who set a 30.590. Harlow, the fastest of them all, 30.372 for the driver out of Vermont. Still looking for race win number 1 of his Droppin the Hammah Cup Series career. So it assures now, with 66 laps to go, they can make it to the checkered flag. So there will be no worries anymore about fuel. And we were just not going to be in the same conversation point we were in at New Hampshire last Sunday. Oh, what a dive from Stepien, taking the high side on Jesse Whittington. But Whittington's going to be the first driver to come in. He's sideways, sliding in on pit road, and he saves it. It'll cost him some time, but he's on pit road without a scratch. And the Luke Haley and the 46er Chevrolet is in on pit road right at the marker. 65 laps to go. So we'll await this pit stop, taking the 4 fresh tires and fuel. Now we await for other drivers in, and we do have an answer. Zach Wilson points his way on pit road. Caution flag, though, comes out. It's Cedric Hunter, who's loose off of 4. And how does this change everything? Whittington just came down pit road. He'll get around the iRacing official pace car. But a huge scare, and it's another contender that ends up spun around in the trouble spot all night long. Second look shows us the answer as to what happened with Hunter. He was pointing to the inside of Steven Stepien. That was a potential battle inside the top 10, and whether it was contact or whether, it was Hunter just trying to slow down and get to pit road, but his car got loose on the transition. That's something we haven't talked about here at Nashville. It is tough to come down pit road. There is an access lane at the entry of turn 3. You'll see it on the left-hand corner of the screen. but that is not used in NASCAR Cup competition. They slow down in the middle of 3. They arc for turn 4. That's where Wilson was coming in. Hunter was following suit, and the car just unraveled from underneath him, got sideways in the transition. This is not an easy track to make a way onto pit road, and now the field has come in. Brandon Banks is in. Alex Muscarella, Van Schaik, Keith, Walden, Stevens, almost the entire field coming onto pit road this time by. This will assure they can make it on fuel. Quick stop from Banks. He is in and out on 10 seconds. Everyone else on the 4 fresh tires. Van Schaik trying to beat him to the lane, and Van Schaik does. What a pit stop for Charles Van Schaik, the rookie, at 10.8 seconds. And it's the 23 car taking the lead. So Charles Van Schaik will take the race lead for the first time in this race. Cedric Hunter has to do it again. This time under pacing, coming down to pit lane. And the rookie is going to have control of the field when we get to our next green flag restart. Again, this is all good on fuel. But this could have been the best case scenario for everyone in the field. It was long enough for the main leaders at the front to have a gasp, have a breath of relief, come in on pit road without any pressure and keep the track position for the most part. And then everyone else who were on the fresh tires and could have gone much longer had we stayed green, they also went long enough to go on pit road. So it was a fundamental idea to come in all together, have wholesale service, and now it's just a straight up fight, assuming we don't have any more yellows from here until the end of this race. We're going to have a green flag restart with 60 laps to go. So that is well within the window that we saw. We know the drivers can go that long on tires as well, so there are no concerns on either end. It's just mostly about how much do you want to save if we, of course, stay green. Remember, we had our yellow of the race bring out a couple more. It was a plethora of them to bring out our second and third. So with our 4th yellow coming out for a self-spin on Cedric Hunter's number 45. The 7-time winner this season will duck back and restart in 17th position, while Jesse Whittington, who was the earliest pitter of the group in this field, he is back in 18th spot. Both of them single file as they revisited the pit lane. How this race has changed in the Music City. Charles Van Schaik, the rookie, out in front, takes the field through the Echo Park Automotive Restart Zone, and we're back under green with 61 laps remaining. Here comes Harlow to the inside, running for second in turn 1. He takes the spot. Banks looks for the crossover. Banks is there on the switchback. Brandon Banks for second to the back straightaway. Three-car fight for position behind. It's Keith, Perosini, and Stepien. Staying green off turn 4. Van Schaik, the leader, 60 to go. Banks is able to clear Stephen Harlow. And Warren Kyle Keith, the man on the attack now to turn 1. Highest we've seen Keith in this race for a long while. Diving in the first corner, he's there. Plants and fires in turn 1. And he's denied, nor shut. 2 white and red cars in succession. Harlow and Keith, the 2 Music City themed cars here in Nashville. Sun poking through the clouds, giving some level of clearness in what has been a mostly cloudy afternoon. And it's Charles Van Schaik in clean air for the first time all night long. And he's enjoying it to the fullest. Now here comes Harlow, attack off turn 4, try to take a peek underneath Brandon Banks there. There's one thing, again, you could do here in Nashville Superspeedway is dive in the corner. We saw that a lot from Van Schaik in the mid portion of the run that we saw most recently before the yellow. A couple drivers in the front of the pack have done it as well. Harlow wants his lick back on Brandon Banks. It'll take him a little while before the 6th car can find his way there, but Banks is leaving that open door in the middle of the corner as he's running that half lane up the racetrack. Here's the Charlie Byer photography onboard camera with Harlow Chevrolet trying to close in. He's the faster car out of the 2 coming back to turn 1. What a relentless drive we've seen from this field. They have kept it fantastically clean through the first 2/3 of this race. And as we close in on 55 laps to go, we are right in the thick of things. The home stretch as Harlow caught a waft of dirty air. Here comes Warren Kyle Keith, a chance to attack as they come around to the front straightaway. Not enough time for the 24 car to get underneath, so they'll stay side by side for maybe just a second staggered, and they'll go back to single file. There's Zach Wilson, who came down pit road. Probably the worst timing for Wilson in all of that. He came in thinking that the short pit was going to work. Caution flag came out right as he was on the pit lane. He was thankful not to fall a lap down. That's where Cedric Connor has been trapped after spinning to cause the yellow. So he's the first driver that's put a lap down in this entire race. We haven't seen lap traffic at all a factor over the night, even as far as this field has thinned out. And so for Hunter, the night has gone from average to worse for the 7-time winner this year. While Wilson is in the similar position that Hunter, Stepien, and Keith were in during the last green flag run, having to weave your way through the rest of this top 10. It's still 9th for Wilson right now, but of course could have been in a much better spot had the yellow not fallen where it did. So for the most part, everybody runs single file still, reminiscent of the early portions of our green flag runs tonight. Just a product of the racing, and no setup changes from this field. And from the admins of the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series, Stepien right behind Warren Kyle Keith, nearly giving him the bumper there, the chrome horn in turn 3. And Keith will maintain the position through the bump and give Stepien the dirty hit to remain in the top 5. But again, no real changes from the admins on the setup of these cars tonight. We have seen that become a rather consistent factor after the update came out, where you can add power to any given car on the sim by 10%. They experimented with it at Charlotte, at Kansas, at all the intermediate tracks, and it worked really well. Everybody seemed to be very happy with the way the cars handled and how much skill it needed to drive the cars at the limit. But of course, at certain tracks, they just didn't want to touch it, especially here when you use the short track package at any track under a mile, and that includes road courses where you have the same package. So what is a 10% increase on intermediate package race cars to 737 horsepower. This car in its natural state developed 750 on the short track package. So rather smart decision by the league admins not to tempt fate and try and add more power to these cars, because, you know, obviously adding power to the cars will make them harder to drive, and we know that the level of talent in this series is varied in the sense there are a lot of drivers that maybe don't like to have extremely loose race cars that are right at the edge of control at any given moment. They like the security that this car gives them in some cases, but they also want a better handling race car than what usually happens, where it just understeers and plows tight. As you can quote a lot of drivers, it plows like a snow plow, really, when you get in these long green flag runs and the right front tire goes away. So finding the happy medium these admins have been doing all year just to satisfy the drivers, and it seems like they have found a medium. Played a little bit with the Indianapolis setup, is 3 wide in the middle of turn 1. James Kunkel, nearly contact between Hendry and Swavely, got sent up the car into the outside wall. Hendry makes the move to the inside, but the cost of the 32 car. And a rather sustained hit for Swavely. How much is that car ailed as a result? Might be worse for wear. Swavely all over the racetrack as Hendry dialed in the bottom. That battle still going on with Chuck Stevens in the middle of the top 13. Hendry defending up top, Stevens on the bottom. And the red, white, and blue Plumco Toyota Camry is going to hold on for dear life. But boy, that was a scare as they came across the turn 1. Stagger 3 wide as James Kunkel made the move to the inside. And eventually it was just all for naught as Swavely gets the worst end of that and is dropped all the way back to 16th place. Here's a look on board with Brandon Banks, the current runner-up right now on the racetrack with 48 laps to go. They have not caught up to Charles Van Schaik. They have maintained around at least half a second to 0.6. But these two right in the thick of things with each other, about a car length separating Harlow and Banks in this runner-up spot fight. And Harlow is getting much closer, so it can very well be a good effort for him as he's able to compete this pass and get one of his best career finishes. Brandon Banks was on a back-to-back top 10 run before he won the race at New Hampshire on Sunday night last week. He had a 6th place finish at Sonoma on the road course, a top 5 at Indianapolis after starting 8th. And as we see it, apart from his 2 wins this year, the largest deficit he has ever had to come back from, starting 17th at the Magic Mile to go on and win that race on a technicality after the overtime restart penalty was given to Steven Stepien. So what a season it's been for Banks, who only has 2 finishes this year outside of the top 10. Obviously, we've talked about Cedric Hunter, who has dominated the headlines. He's won the most races. He's on the verge of history to Lawson Peel. And at the moment, many drivers and many people watching this series can consider him a pure-on championship favorite. But if you're looking for any other who could easily capture the title on consistency alone with a chase format that rewards that exact method of driving, you have to point to the Valvoline Chevrolet, who now gives up 2nd place to Stephen Harlow at the exit of turn 4 on a nice pass. Caution flag comes out. Trouble in the back of the field. And it's Richard Swavely, the man in trouble. Fifth caution for incident with 44 laps to go. And of course, we saw the damage from Swavely on the right front, how that hampered the handling of his car. We almost expected him to spin right after the contact, just given how hard the hit was to the outside safer barrier, but Swavely had given up all the time, of course, with the aerodynamic deficiencies on the right front. And it seems like the car just got unsettled on its lonesome, driving the apex in turns 1 and 2. And yeah, car just got sideways. He was running in front of Cedric Hunter, who will now gain his lap back as a result of this yellow. That's a single car mistake that's been most of the trouble tonight. It's happened off of turn number 4, but this time it was a solo car spin. Take a listen. Held onto the brakes and just hoped that it didn't hit a wall, but Swavely was good nonetheless. The field is in on pit road. What may be the final stop tonight if things end up going green. Looks like Brandon Banks is going to win this race easily off pit road. Van Schaik with a rather slow stop. He's going to dread this moment. He's going to drop a ton of track position. Van Schaik drops to 7th off of pit lane. And Brandon Banks will retake the lead here in Nashville. So we'll come back around to the green flag with 41 laps to go from Nashville. And as the haze comes up on the sunset skies in Lebanon, another look at the weather and how things have changed. Only 83 degrees out there, so it has dropped a couple temperatures down compared to when we started this race. It was around 86 degrees Fahrenheit, so 3 degrees of a difference. Winds blowing to the northwest at around 6 miles an hour and just calming down on what was a mostly cloudy affair. There was a debate in the infield chat in the week before this race happened, whether it was going to be under the lights or in the daytime, and this race was initially scheduled to be at the night. But the admins changed it, wanted a day race, but they ended up with a very cloudy one, in fact, and one that almost handles like a night race. And it's Brandon Banks trying to go back-to-back for the first time in his career with Stephen Harlow, who got around him on the last green flag run on the outside with Warren, Kyle Keith, and Jesse Whittington right behind to give support in row number 2. 41 laps to go. Can we go green until the end? It's a great start from the Valvoline Chevrolet. Keith finds a breath of fresh air inside to turn 1. Whittington helps him there. And the battle for second is on. Keith tries to side draft Harlow. He's not letting him get away to turn 3. The 24 car dials in on the bottom. He misses the apex. Whittington follows him under. Harlow's going to continue to have the position for now. Through the bump, they stay side by side. And Harlow clears for second. Escapes the pressure from the Target Ford Mustang. And the rest of the field singled out. Zach Wilson back to 7th. Steven Stepien has moved his way to 8th. And remember, Cedric Hunter got the lap back. He is back on the lead lap group, and he has moved his way up to 15th on the opening lap of this restart. And now it's a question mark as to whether this man right here can make any imprint on Brandon Banks. We saw him get around the 5 car earlier on in that last run. But with 39 laps to go, assuming we stay green and everyone on the same set of Goodyear Eagles, how much does this change? Banks only on 2 fresh tires. Everyone else, for the most part, on 4. Harlow diving to the bottom, trying to move the air around the 5 car and get him out of the way. He is tucking closer. He's got a clean air situation right in front of him. Caution flag flies out again. This time it's Stepien in trouble. It's Stepien around to bring the race in yellow. And we'll do the restart all over again. Appears to be another single car incident, this time in the middle of the pack. And this is running right in front of Zach Wilson when we just mentioned the 88 car and tapped right the back bumper of Matthew Pericini's car, and it looks like just unsettled the handling on his Budweiser Chevrolet. Great job by the field to get around. A great job by Stepien to keep it as low as he can. And the Methuen, Massachusetts native now has to work from the back of this field. Question is, does he have enough tire sets left to come down pit road again? And will he take the opportunity? There's a look, the tap, and the spin. Just a lazy spin through the transition. Almost in the same point where Hunter went around on the entry to pit road earlier on in the race. But Stepien indeed will visit pit lane, so he will take the splash of fuel, take whatever he can, and at this point, why not, right? You have the situation where you already lost all the track position that you can. If you can alternate on strategy and stay out when maybe everyone else comes in, 37 laps to go is still a long way from the checkered flag, so there still can be a change of the hands. And the guards can easily be swapped out at the end, so maybe an opportunity for Stepien to try something different now that he's forced in this situation from the mistake after getting spun around there and having the car unravel from his fingertips in turns 3 and 4. So Brandon Banks is now the race leader. First time he's in the lead in a little while. And again, someone who is trying to make sure he can have as much momentum as possible entering the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series chase. There is one driver on the outside that's trying to beat him to the punch. It's Stephen Harlow and the driver of the number 6 who will start on the outside of row number 1. We'll try and talk with him now. Stephen, you had a good restart there trying to catch up to the 5 of Banks. What have you seen in the last few runs and how this car has developed over the night?
I just love the way it's driving right now. I'm having a bunch of fun. It's hard to pass, but it's kind of Nashville, so you work with what you got. I think we'll put on a pretty good show, me and Brandon will. Maybe Warren, too, if he gets involved.
What did you feel there on the strategy? You know that Banks was giving you at least a half lane, so I'm sure the clean air helped a little bit. But how do you attack this restart where last time by you had to fend off Warren Kyle Keith in the restart zone, and most likely you may have to do the same thing this time around?
I just got to get as good at the jump as I can and then rip the top for a corner or two until I can find a way to really go to work on Banks.
Well, Steven, we appreciate the time. It's a bad-looking race car. It's very much fast right now. It's bad fast, as I'll say. Steven, best of luck here on the restart.
Thank you very much.
Didn't want to call him bad. He has a very good race car as of right now. I wanted to say bad fast. It's a driver that has really moved up through the ranks in this race alone and has moved around a ton to the middle of the top 10. But we saw the great defensive strategy on Warren Kyle Keith. Had to fend him off at the exit of turn 2 and may do so here, but obviously trying to time the restart for Brandon Banks and make it a little tougher on the South Carolinian. Brandon Banks is known as his reputation for being a very clean driver. A lot of drivers in this field will tell you that. And so we may see a battle of the ages between the two Chevrolets. Pace car is down. We'll go green with 35 laps to go from Nashville Super Speedway. Back to the Echo Park Automotive restart zone. And it's beautiful timing from Stephen Harlow. Right on the money with Brandon Banks. The two side by side for the lead. Can he complete the task? He's still there off turn 2. Stephen Harlow with a run down the back straightaway. Nowhere in sight is Keith trying to hold on in front of Whittington. Stephen Harlow picks out in front. Banks misses the corner. They'll make contact. Caution flag is out, and it's Harlow in the lead. It's Van Schaik and Justin Hendry on the outside wall, turn 3. Our first multi-car accident since the restart snafu between Stepien and Hunter. And now it's Hendry Van Schaik, the two that are involved in what is the largest crash of this race today. There's Cedric Hunter making it 3 wide on the inside. Oh, it looked like Walden got a piece of Chuck Stevens, sent him up the racetrack, and then Hendry got all out of Soltz. And Steven Stepien with the hardest hit of the night. Remember, he dropped back in the field after the spin, so he ends up with possibly race-dealing damage. Here's another look from the 88 car. And just a hard tap. Walden around. Hendry, Van Schaik. Multiple hitters in that. And it's Hendry that really gets the worst of it as they came around at turn 3. Here's the second look. Saw Steven just got sent. What a gorgeous save from Chuck Stevens there in the middle of the group. But our largest accident of the night takes out 4 cars. And all of them either on pit road or already out of this race. Stepien, it appears, has already hit pit lane and most likely will be set behind the garage. He is still trying to hold on for what it's worth. And the 88 car, I don't know if he has big suspension damage. He does make his way on to pit road, but it will be a lengthy repair. Not sure if we're going to be able to see the Stepien car back out on this Nashville Super Speedway. But what a restart by Stephen Harlow, able to get the best of Banks, time the restart perfectly, and now to the tune of the inside of row number 1. That's where the 6 car is going to try to make himself known, trying to make it home for the next 32 or so laps. We should go green with at least 31 or 30 laps to go. And mind you, the field at the front came down pit road around 10 or so laps ago, so it hasn't been that long, but it is going to get long at some point, and so the tires will eventually wear. This stop-and-go strategy isn't going to benefit anybody on fresh tires, so that will help those who have the buffer out in front. But for them, tire wear is still going to be a thing, and whether you're going to have hot and cold tires, how that changes in this run, I think that'll be very interesting for them and how they attack on that. And Harlow decides the outside lane is where he wants to be for this green flag restart. He'll be the first leader that chooses the outside all night long. So now we ask how this will work. Jesse Whittington is the one right behind. Warren Kyle Keith is the one on the inside of the second row. So assuming that the Cypress Racing Chevrolets will help Harlow out in this clause, or whether Banks can do what Harlow did to Banks in the last green flag restart and just match his energy and be able to make it side by side coming back to turn 1 with Banks on the bottom. We do know that over the course of the race, when the rubber builds up on the inside, it slickens up. So it does help that half lane higher, especially when you are door-to-door for position. That's how Harlow was able to take the lead. Just pinch Banks to the bottom, force him to use less throttle on corner exit, and thus be able to have the advantage once you actually rise out of the banking to the longer straightaways. It'll be that idea that Harlow wants to execute, that theory that he wants to prove right in search of his first career, dropping the Hammah Cup Series victory. pace car fades down to the entry of pit road. It's Harlow, the control car. Banks on the inside. Keith and Whittington to react to whatever happens in the Echo Park Automotive Restart Zone. It's a good jump from Banks, but it's an even better one from the leader. Harlow's able to clear. Banks is able to stay in front of the stampede that happens from third on back to turn 1. Harlow in control. Can that sustain to the back straightaway? Parasiti's loose. Wilson to the inside. As Whittington attacks on Keith, side by side for third to turn 3. It's Harlow that maintains control for now. Hunter regaining ground. He's to the inside of Justin Erb. That's in the battle for 8th. 29 to go next time by. It's Banks that's still holding out hope that the half lane higher could help him in his return. Looks like there's trouble at the back, slowing down. Van Schaik, Roy, and a few others gaining ground. There's damage for cars behind. We're going to stay green for now. But it almost seemed like there was trouble near the back end of the field. They kept it together. We're going to stay green for the moment. And the top 6 have pulled away. What can Brandon Banks do? He's led 62 laps tonight. He started this one back in 16th. Remember, he rolled off the grid 17th in New Hampshire and somehow was able to walk away with a checkered to even his surprise in dropping the Hammah victory lane. Can there be more magic from the Myrtle Beach, South Carolina native? Washes up in turn 4. No dice there off the corner. And has to hold up this wall on Warren Kyle Keith for the lead. So it's Harlow, Banks, Keith, Whittington, and Wilson, the top 5. Cypress Racing Academy 4th through 6 with Parasini right in the background. And obviously a season to remember for Jesse Whittington. Another caution flies. This time, other cars into it. Cedric Hunter's the man in it, and so is Alex Muscarella. And we'll have another green flag restart. Gotta wonder what happened here to bring out this latest spill. They were the only cars going side by side in this specific moment. Remember, Hunter was just in the top 10. So the car got right under him, went around in front of Muscarella, who also had to slow down, and contact from behind. And it sent the 48 into the 45 even further. It looked like it might have been Charles Van Schaik that got a piece of that. And so Cedric Hunter's night has just gotten worse. The car going around for a spill for just the 2nd time in this race. And again, it's that bump, the treacherous one off turn 4. It's caught a lot of drivers off guard. It was Chuck Stevens that actually made contact with Alex Muscarella to send him further into the 45 car. Those machines going to be on pit road, and of course damage repair for everyone else in the field. As for those that are out in front, they're going to stay out this extra time by. And remember, they went more than at least 66 laps on a green flag stint. In all of our long runs tonight, we haven't gone past that magic number yet. And obviously we won't for the rest of the night, but assuming track position has been so important, which to the moment it has, and don't see a point why anyone in the front of the field would come down pit road in this case. It just seems like staying out is the right call. And that's what they hope will be the situation for them. As they come in on the pit lane. We continue under this yellow flag period late in this race, coming to the final 25 laps here from Nashville Superspeedway. Don't go anywhere. We've got more coverage of race 18 in the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series from Nashville on the KBueno Racing Network.
This baby hits 88 miles per hour. They're gonna see some serious.
They wanna know if we still got it. They say rap's king. They wanna know how I feel up. And even when I I was close to defeat, I rose to my feet. Taking my time to perfect the beat, and I still got love in the streets.
Welcome back to the Nashville Superspeedway. Some technical issues there as we were trying to go under the caution period break, but we are going to be back in action with the lights off from the iRacing official pace car. Will officially go green with 24 laps to go. And just like the first verse, the second one is going to be the very same for Stephen Harlow. Outside front row start. It's the exact same row number 2 in the exact same format. Remember, Brandon Banks kept it close with the 6 car over the last run, but it was Harlow's outside decision that worked out in his favor and actually worked out for Banks. Didn't have to deal with the pressure from behind on car number 94 and Jesse Whittington in that blue machine on the outside of the second row. So the red, white, and blue Valvoline Chevrolet hopes that this is going to be the same case, or if he can stay underneath Stephen Harlow, it'll be a reignited battle for the race lead. 24 left from Lebanon, Tennessee. A poor restart from Warren Kyle Keith. Tough for him to get going. The inside of row number 2 has stagnated. Banks and Harlow have pulled away to turn 1. Looked like wheel spin from the back end of the 24 machine sends Warren Kyle Keith all the way back to 13th. And as this race stays green, it is a gaggle of race cars in the middle of the top 10. Kunkel on the high side. Hunter trying to regain ground on Zach Wilson. Kunkel's in the wall. Off of turn 4, will stay green for now. And Wilson takes the power move inside of Kevin Roy, the Celsius Ford Mustang. That's in contention for 7th place to turn 1. Sends it up the racetrack. Here comes Hunter to the inside, taking a peek at the 22 Ford Mustang on the back straightaway. And the top 3 are gone. More than half a second clear of Justin Urban, Matthew Parasini. Their battle ongoing for 4th. And everyone else has pulled away. And what a battle this is becoming. Oh, Hendry is sideways in 1. Saves it. What a save from Justin Hendry. And will stay green for now. The whole field is scouring around. There's contact. 3 wide as they come to the back straightaway. They almost made it work, threading the needle in turn 3. Hendry survives the mayhem, the mess in the mid-pack. Oh my goodness. And somehow we're going to stay under the green flag. 20 laps to go next time by. And Banks is still within 3 car lengths, but he's not there yet. Onboard look from Whittington shows lots of work to do. 20 to go at the stripe. Whittington holds on to 3rd. How much can he gain in this final stint? Working hard, ripping at the steering wheel at the exit of turn 4. He's having a ton of work to do behind the wheel right now. He hasn't gotten any closer yet to the top 3, but they have all separated to the tune to at least a few car lengths. And Harlow is just in full stride. 30.3 flat for the driver of the number 6 car. He has pulled away. He has maintained position in front. It's going to be right where Harlow hunkers down and tries to hope that this race stays without any drama. Here comes Herb trying to challenge on Parasini. Remember, he's 14 clear of the top 12 cut line, and a top 10 will very much help for Herb in this regard. Trying to ease his way into the group. The driver out of West Allis, Wisconsin, the 28-year-old, is challenging down on Matthew Parasini. He hasn't gotten any closer yet. And then right where the danger zone is, Zach Wilson and Cedric Hunter, who have ended up in the mid-pack. Just how this race has turned around for 2 of the strongest cars of the night. It's been bad luck for Hunter. It's been also bad luck in a different area for Wilson. But here comes the 60 car pointing to the inside in turn 1. And he'll make the move for 5th. Clean and green at the front of the field. Earp sends it turn 3, still single file. And this is the gap. Difference at around half a second. Faster car this time by. Give it to the 6. 30.413. And could this be the moment where if there's not a yellow, Banks is not able to do enough, and Stephen Harlow is able to sail off into the Music City sunset and take Broadway home? And regardless, still good finishes out of this group. Of course, Jesse Whittington is going to come away with enough points to potentially seal his deal come Richmond next week. Brandon Banks already locked in. Stephen Harlow practically locked in as well. But this is the perfect situation for Harlow, not only in this regard to lock up a spot in the chase, but also, as we remind you, the in-season challenge that continues. He is head-to-head with Garrett Walden. Walden in the 43. Had a couple hard incidents tonight. He still runs in this race, but is all the way back in 9th place. So if Harlow's able to win, even if he's able to stay in front, he's going to move on to the final round and have a chance for at least 50 or 100 bucks at Richmond next Sunday. And then the next battle between Cedric Hunter and Warren Kyle Keith seems to fall right in the favor of the most dominant driver of the year, even with the damage, even with the spins and all. Hunter, as it stands, will be able to hold on for position, and it's looking like it's a Hunter versus Harlow final in the Commonwealth of Virginia on Sunday, August 9th, for $100 to close out the Droppin' the Hammah in-season challenge, and you won't want to miss that. Should be a lot of fun. Lots of chaos as well on our first short track race of the season since we were out racing in the desert in Avondale, Arizona. Field stabilizes with 12 laps to go. The gap between the leaders remains stable at around half a second, and it has not fluctuated in the benefit or in the doubt of Harlow or Brandon Banks. And here's the closest battle on the racetrack in this fight for 11th place. Kunkel in the front, Stevens and Van Schaik right there alongside. Kunkel opening the door on the outside. Here comes Stevens on the crossover to turn 3. They make contact, spinning as Kunkel sideways up into the outside wall, and the more drama ensues, the more scares we get at a late race yellow inside 11 laps to go. Kunkel got the contact from Stevens, and Kunkel gets the worst end of the deal in the outside wall. Can imagine not happy at all about what transpired there. Got loose off turn 2. Stevens denied the open door on the outside, said, "I'll take the inside." And then it just got loose, and nothing that Kunkel could do other than ride it up to the outside wall, switching right in front of Kyle Keith, who had to hop on the binders to avoid any sort of contact. He's now in the wall. And Harlow avoids what could have been an easy scare to make him have to work much harder in this race than he's working right now. He is pulling out into the driveway, and he is settled into his race car. 0.8 of a second clear, and now about 0.2 faster than the runner-up. 9 laps to go. Look at what could be here in this battle for second, as the Luke Haley and the 46er Chevrolet trying to cap off another solid run tonight. Still enough time to make up ground on Brandon Banks. He's been faster than the 5 car the last few times, and looking to capture his 3rd top 10 in his last 4 races. And what will be his first podium run since a 3rd place finish in early June at Pocono in Long Pond, Pennsylvania. So it has been a little while since we've seen Whittington grace the podium. He's been happy every single time and has had a great season thus far. And even through tonight, may not be a race victory, but still enough points in the bag to lock up a spot in the chase. And obviously now in the late end of the regular season, that's what matters. Just being alive, having momentum, having good races, and obviously keeping all fenders on the race car. That's one thing you obviously want to do, but having enough pace to be able to run this well. And how about Cypress Racing Academy as well? Still 3rd, 4th, and 5th on the racetrack. They have Stevens back in 12th, but an overall nice team effort for Cypress Racing Academy, a team that obviously has blossomed much into this 2026 season with their new drivers, the addition of Wilson midway through the calendar, and the success of drivers like Perosini, like Stevens, like Whittington. It's going to be another solid finish for that Chevrolet-based camp as they try to close this thing out. Brandon Banks right now no closer to the race leader than he's been over the last few laps. And now just settled in as we come across the 5 laps to go. If he can hold on, still some great points, and continuing his season finish streak of top 5s and top 10s, which has been the overarching art of body that Banks has put up this entire year. That's what we'll see out of those 2 cars, still single file. Here comes Hunter trying to look the inside on Herb, who's trying to shut the door in 3, does so. And Hunter with nowhere to go washes up the track, but you can tell the Canadian wants to get to the inside badly. That's the auction up for 6th place to the front straightaway. What a crazy night it's been from the Music City. More yellows than we anticipated. Many of them single car accidents. Our largest crash involving 4. Stepien being taken out. Cedric Hunter being involved in characteristically rare spins for the most dominant driver of the year. And it's old tires at this moment that prevails. On a 40-lap stint, they'll cross the line for the final 2 laps and 2.66 miles from Nashville Superspeedway. Brandon Banks still meanders around 7/10 back of the leader. It's half a second between Banks and Whittington in the fight for second. An illustrious drive for Stephen Harlow. And as he comes across the line, it will make this race official. We had overtime last Sunday off of turn 4. Stephen Harlow sees the white flag one more time around from Nashville. Stephen Harlow's best career finish and best chance at a win was second at Phoenix Raceway, where he lost to Eric Schaefer in the early portions of 2025. And as he's broken through this season, he's had good races here and there, but he hasn't had a race quite like this. And he's going to finally break it all in career start number 40. Stephen Harlow is a Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series race winner from Nashville. What a drive and what a finish for Stephen Harlow in his 40th start over these 2 DTH Cup Series seasons. It is the DTH team that gets back in victory lane, but most importantly, it's Stephen Harlow, his first. You never forget it. Stephen Harlow takes the W at Nashville Superspeedway and will visit Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series victory lane for the first time in his career. Said his car felt great before ensuing on tough restarts against Brandon Banks, one of the best drivers in this series, and handled it with grace, handled it with professionalism, and gets to enjoy his first career victory. What a drive by Stephen Harlow at the end of it all And after 200 laps, this race finishes under the scheduled distance. And let's bring you the unofficial results as this comes to a close from Lebanon, Tennessee. It's career win number 1 for Stephen Harlow. 6/10 back was Brandon Banks. Best finish of Brandon for the first time in a little while, obviously without counting the race victory from Sunday last week at New Hampshire. Jesse Whittington gets his first podium finish since Pocono in early June. We'll talk to Whittington, Banks, and the race winner Harlow before this is all said and done tonight. Matthew Parasini and Zach Wilson close out a Cypress Racing Academy 3rd, 4th, and 5th place finish, all in a line. Justin Erb back in 6th. This should help him dramatically in the point standings gap. Back to the driver in the cut line behind him in white, or rather in Kip Easley in the 27th. Cedric Hunter ends up in 7th. Garrett Walden in 8th. Alex Muscarella in 9th. And Richard Swavely, even with the damage, to survive in the top 10. Charles Van Schaik is in 11th. Chuck Stevens back in the 12th running spot, with James Kunkel 13th, Justin Hendry, and Casey Knight in the last drivers on the lead lap, before you find Warren Kyle Keith went 2 laps down at the end of that race for 16th. Steven Stepien ended up in a hard crash, repaired the race car, but walked out there on the racetrack in 17th, 8 laps down. Kevin Roy and Brad Fulham bring the end of our 19-car field here from Nashville Superspeedway. Well, we welcome you in to the KBRN post-race show, where we are glad to be joined by Stephen Harlow, career win number 1 in career start number 40. You told us, Stephen, that this car felt beautiful right before we went under that green flag restart. You handled business the first time against Banks. You handle it a second time against the same competition, and you hold on for the win. What are the emotions for you right now?
Oh, that was awesome. Nashville's a notoriously hard track to pass at, and I was just hoping I could stay up front at any point. If I'd gotten in the back, that would have been it for me. You saw the people that ended up there and couldn't get back to the front. Yeah, really just happy I finally got one. Been a minute. I've gotten close, but first one feels good.
We talked about how close you were at Phoenix. I think that was probably one of the main races where we saw you as a dominant contender tonight. It didn't seem like there was dominant pace in the first half, but things really turned up as the race progressed and through track position. And even when you were back in the top 5, you still had a car worthy enough to run up to the front and take no prisoners. So how did this style develop over the course of the night, and how comfortable you felt behind the wheel as the race moved on to its final stage?
Well, in that first run, I definitely got my right front up. Killed any sort of tires I would have later on. And then the second 30 something laps, I was just trying to feel out what would be like a good, smooth, consistent pace. Then once we started getting those cautions around 60 laps in or something, I don't remember. Once we started getting those cautions, it was a lot more about just, okay, get clean air, don't let anybody else get by me. Because when I came out behind Banks with him on 2 and me on 4, I was like, all I have to do is get by him. That's it. And took a couple attempts, but I got there.
You came into this race 9th in the driver's standings. We knew for the most part you and the drivers around you were, as far as things goes, characteristically locked in without actually being locked in to the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series chase. So with 2 races to go, including tonight, you take the win at Nashville, you go into Richmond with your head up high. How much confidence and momentum does this give you to just close out this regular season on a high note and run at it for a championship in a few weeks?
It's a lot of confidence. Getting your first race win's a big thing, especially after being here for a few years now. Being able to run up front consistently is something I've really been striving for, and made a lot of mistakes everywhere. But yeah, this is a big confidence booster. Richmond definitely doesn't feel like my best track, so any sort of even mental advantage I can get going toward Richmond will be really good. And then into the chase, it's just drive fast and hope I do well.
when you join a series and you have momentum, you have speed like you did when Sunoco Cup was coming to an end. I remember some of those races where you went right nose to tail with Lawson Peel for race victories at certain tracks, and those didn't pan out for you. From Stephen Harlow then to Stephen Harlow now, maybe what would you say? What emotions do you have? How do you describe that level of evolution from then where you were so close but no cigar to now where you have finally accomplished a race win?
Back then, it was the nerves that got me. That would specifically the Michigan race. I caught myself off guard and didn't expect to be in a position to pass him with 2 to go, and then was just lost from there on. Now it's always try to have a plan for whether I go forward, back, get put in this position, that position. Just having some sort of like mental map of where I want to go, what I want to do. That's really the biggest thing. Before it was just push the pedals, turn the wheel, go fast. Now there's a lot more thought and planning.
Well, you still pushed the pedals and you went fast, and you were the fastest of everyone in this field tonight, Steven, on your first career win here at Nashville Superspeedway. Before we let you go to continue the celebrations with you and your teammates, anybody that you want to give a shout out to or thank on your first career dub?
Oh yeah, Warrior Soar, Team Watson Racing setups, and sorry, there's a train going by. I don't know if you guys can hear that or not, but Warrior Soar, Team Watson Racing setups, Project Hopner, my family watching at home, my girlfriend in the other room who's already asleep, and my older brother Ross. Today is actually his birthday, so huge happy birthday to you. I hope me winning is as good as a birthday present as I can get you right now. But yeah, really thankful for all the support, and hopefully we can keep this momentum moving forward.
Well, a big happy birthday to Ross, and I think it was probably destined on a Harlow's birthday for the other Harlow to take victory here in this series. Steven, in all seriousness, congratulations on the win. Go celebrate. Go enjoy it. We'll see you at the regular season finale at Richmond. And also, congratulations on moving on to the finale of the in-season challenge. $100 or $50 on the line for you. So congratulations on both fronts.
Thanks, Kenneth.
Stephen Harlow moves on to the final of the in-season challenge, but most importantly, a first career race victory. Nothing quite like it. We joined the second place finisher tonight in Brandon Banks. Brandon, I know there was a surprise last Sunday in New Hampshire when you were called the race victor. This one had less theatrics, obviously not as surprising at the end. You had a car worthy of the race victory. Those last few restarts where you were trying to catch Stephen Harlow. Tell us maybe what you missed there and what you could have had to try and win this race.
Yeah, I mean, I you know that one got handed to me last week. That was nice, but I kind of wanted to win one, just on speed. I felt like we had a really, really good car. It's just when you get behind somebody, it's almost impossible to get by them, unless they make a mistake or he had a little bit different tire situation. He got to my outside and had a heck of a restart that one time, and he got me, and that was pretty much all it took. I felt like we were really even with him. I think he was the best car, honestly, through the whole race, the longevity of the run. But I feel like we were definitely a top 3 car and had a really good chance at it. But I mean, just being behind him in dirty air, I honestly, I probably could have stayed right up underneath him. But he was feeding me so much dirty air that if I'd have made one little mistake, Jesse would have went by me. And so I dropped off of him about 8/10 to try to at least get a little bit of clean air to the nose so Jesse couldn't drive by me. And just kind of was racing for points at that point. I was hoping that Cedric, I saw him had a couple mishaps there through the race. I was hoping he would kind of finish a little further back. He seems to always always seems to get right back up there at the end, no matter what happens to him. So at least this way we're a little closer in points going into the last race, and might have a good shot at for the regular season championship. We'll see.
Talk about racing for points, and we know that the 23rd place finish at Daytona was a little bit of a backfall, and then top 10 at Sonoma, top 5 in the race after that at Indianapolis, and follow that up with a win at New Hampshire, and then, of course, second here tonight. So when you think of the grand scope of things, how important is that to just get right back on the consistent footing that we've seen you perform with all year long, to have that momentum going into the chase in a few weeks?
Yeah, I mean that's what you got to do. You got to just kind of forget last week and try to figure out what you're going to do better this week. So that's what we did. Like I said, we're just kind of just trying to accumulate as many points as we possibly can. Cedric's tough, man. Like you said, he wins a lot. So when you can have the opportunity to actually have a chance to gain some points on him, you take it. And but a lot of these guys in here are really good, man. It's hard to even get a couple spots here and there, let alone go out there and win the race and try to try to gain more points. But yeah, I mean we're gonna do what we've been doing all year. Just trying to finish top fives, top tens, give ourselves a chance, get to the playoffs, and and we'll see what happens. But yeah, like I said, we've had a good season, pretty consistent. I just want to finish strong next week.
So Richmond Raceway is the track upcoming, a short track closing out the regular season. We know that you are locked in on points till the chase, so no worries if there's a bad race there. But what do you make anyway of the track in Virginia?
And we're not bad there. I think we'll put a little extra practice in this week. Maybe get with Schaefer. He's that's his home track. He's really good there, so maybe he can give me a couple pointers how to get around here. But yeah, I mean we're just gonna go in there and just do the best we can. Like I said, we're not really racing for any kind of um, you know anything but trying to win the regular season championship. So maybe we throw a different strategy at them or something. Maybe it works out in our favor, but we'll see. We'll give it all we can, and regardless of what happens, I feel like we had a pretty good season, and got a lot of momentum going into the chase here.
Solid finish tonight, second here at Nashville Super Speedway. Before we let you go, anybody you want to give a shout out to or thank for the run?
Well, obviously you guys do an awesome job. Appreciate you. DTH for sponsoring the league. DBR guys, Kip had to miss again. He's having some problems with I guess getting here from work and things like that. So missing him. And just like everybody that watches us, appreciate it. We're just gonna go into next week and uh do the best we can do. And you never know, it might work out. I think we're gonna be close in points, so it's gonna be I'm gonna have to finish in front of him, so we'll see what we can do. And congrats to Steven on that first win, man. It's awesome. Congrats to him. It's a lot. It's really hard to get one in here, and to do it the way he did it, it's pretty impressive. He was really fast. I feel like he was the best car. So, but yeah, we'll go to next week and we'll see what we can do, man.
All eyes forward on Richmond. Should be fun, but Brandon, great to talk to you as always. Congratulations on the second place finish here at Nashville, and we'll see you in the field in the regular season finale next Sunday.
All right, thanks, Kenneth.
Brandon Banks closes out the top two. Closing out the top three tonight is Jesse Whittington. So back to the top three, Jesse, for the first time since early June, and Pocono. Bad fast car in this final run. Tell us what you saw, what you felt, and how things were going in those final restarts until the end.
Oh man, just being brutally honest, I don't know if I've ever been more disappointed in a podium in my life. Uh, I felt like track position meant everything. I was able to qualify well, and then pretty early on, just got some big time air packed on the rear end. About lost it and lost a lot of track position. Got caught out uh, by a strategy call. I don't know what ended up actually happening, but I was on pit road. They were dropping the jack on the left side whenever the caution flag flew, and nothing I could do at that point. I mean, man, it's just I couldn't find a way to keep track position, so I decided to take two tires on that last pit stop to see if I could just get some track position and see how the car would drive, and it was actually rotating really well, but man, I could not find a way past those two guys. I was running really consistent lap times and just couldn't make it happen. Congrats to Steven on his first career win. But man, that's disappointing to see it right there. And just nothing you can do about it with how bad the dirty air was.
I think of the questions that I asked, not only Brandon a couple minutes ago, but to Steven in Victory Lane. Points were a huge talking point going into tonight. It was the same for you. You were not guaranteed a spot yet, but we know that at least in the position of you and Harlow, you may as well just be guaranteed a spot in the top 12, but how important still is third place, even with the disappointment of not winning, to be able to gather enough to head into Richmond with at least the best chance possible to have that ticket to the chase?
Yeah, I mean, the goal this season was just to come in and not really make a whole lot of noise, try to see if I could just have some clean races and and get some good finishes, make the playoffs or the chase and go from there. And the goal tonight was just to come in and see if we can get a little bit of momentum, because Richmond has been one of my better tracks over the last little bit. And I think I even had a pair of top fives in Sunoco whenever we were still over there. So just trying to get a little bit of momentum behind me going to one of my favorite tracks. And I think that was really important. P3 should be able to lock us in. And hopefully we gained a couple spots in the standings, because that's some more bonus points if we can do that and have a good finish next week and keep those positions. So every spot matters.
It's mattering, especially in these final few races. Richmond up next, Jesse. I want you to give me at least a few words on your reaction, at least your thoughts on what Richmond should bring us next Sunday.
If tonight is any indication of how next week is going to go, I saw Richard in our infield chat. He was already talking about Dive Bomb City. So, shoot, if we were getting that tonight, I wouldn't be surprised if we get something very similar next week. Richmond is another track that's really hard to pass at, and I don't think it's car specific. It's hard to pass in the trucks. It's hard to pass in the Xfinity cars. This car is, you just got to find a way. And so if I had to put anything on it, it's going to be a lot like tonight. Probably some good green flag runs, maybe a couple cautions from some overzealous dive bombs. But other than that, if we can have another night like tonight, I think we'll be able to put on a pretty damn good show for y'all.
Should be fun. I think should be chaotic in the same breath. But Jesse, we always appreciate the time. Before we let you go, got to give the shout outs and thanks for who makes it possible. Who does make it possible for you?
Absolutely. My wife, my kids first and always. Never complain whenever I come out here. I actually had to go inside just before we gridded up to go help her, help my daughter get a tooth pulled. So I can't thank them enough for their love and support. And of course, tonight with the music theme, I don't know if Luke Haley, my buddy, is watching, but if you're in the Oklahoma City area, go check him out. Follow his page on Facebook, see where he's going to be playing, and go check him out. We got Secret Lab. I'm loving my chair. Noblo headsets. We'll forever be going to these things. Moza, I'm loving this wheel. Man, thanks to you for putting on the show week in and week out. I always enjoy going back and watching. And thanks to the league, the admins, for putting this on week after week. I'm excited to see what next week brings us. But just got to get there first, Well,
we'll see how it all happens, but it's a great start tonight, especially there as the chase comes up in a few weeks. Congratulations, Jesse, on the third place finish here from Nashville. Great to talk to you as always, and looking forward to Richmond next Sunday. We'll see you there.
Yes, sir. See you then. Have a great rest of your night.
Jesse Whittington closes out the podium here tonight from the Music City and Nashville Superspeedway, one of those few drivers that got into the Music City theme this evening. So we move on into the rest of the season, and one final step before the chase field is decided. Richmond Raceway, August 9th, next Sunday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. You will not want to miss it right here on the KBueno Racing Network YouTube channel. And then from there, it is a full-on run-through of the chase until the very end of the season at Charlotte Motor Speedway, which should be a ton of fun. We've gone through the entire schedule so far. let's see how things go once Chicagoland comes up on August 16th. We want you to join us next Sunday again, August 9th, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on the KBueno Racing Network YouTube channel. One more update on behalf of the in-season challenge. We are now down to the final 2 that are available for the $100 or $50 cash prize. It is head-to-head at Richmond between Stephen Harlow, the winner tonight, and Cedric Hunter, who finishes right in front of Warren Kyle Keith and is able to take away the top spot in terms of those two battling for the position and the single elimination fight into the final round in Virginia. So we'll see that happen. We'll see the 12 drivers decided, and of course we'll see the battle for the in-season challenge come to a close at the very end. So we want to thank you so much for joining us tonight on our coverage of race number 18 of the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series season from the virtual Nashville Superspeedway, where for the first time it's a career victory for Stephen Harlow. Finally breaks through the ceiling and wins his first Droppin' the Hammah Cup race on behalf of Warren Kyle Keith, Richard Swavely, Steven Stampian, the entire admin group behind the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series and behind all of our coverage on the KBueno Racing Network. For Francisco Bacallao, Charlie Byer, Keelan Belsha, Nate Polite, Mikey Neal, and everyone else, I'm Kenneth Bueno saying so long from Lebanon, Tennessee. Brand new winner in the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series history, and it's Stephen Harlow with one race to go in the regular season. We'll see you there.